the Beenleigh ambulance was out on another job, and Beenleigh police then sent a patrol car around to the ambulance station.
Ambulance centre, right speaking.
Mate, Mark from Beenleigh Police Station, outside Beenleigh Ambo. Mate, we need an ambulance here ASAP. This fella's got tremendous head injuries. Mate, he's either deceased or very near to.
When I arrived down there, the scene had been taped off, cordoned off by the uniform officers and attendants, and down near the main entrance to the ambulance station was the body of an obviously deceased male person, heavily tattooed and covered in blood with some very obvious visible injuries. I've investigated assaults and some serious assaults previously, but the injuries were astounding. Probably some of the most extensive and the most horrific that I had witnessed myself up to that time. There was a tram track bruising, which are parallel or tapered lines coinciding with each other, which indicates a baseball bat or a pipe. The person had obviously undergone a serious beating of some sort. Where that had occurred was obviously not at the ambulance station.
In most circumstances, bodies are found where they're assaulted. In this particular case, it's been dumped, so it automatically presumes a car, so therefore tyre impression evidence becomes important.
Essentially, we're looking for evidence that would have been brought to that scene and which didn't normally belong at that scene, which might help us to paint a picture of what had occurred.
As they know well in forensic circles, every contact leaves a trace. And that was what the crime scene examiners were hoping was the case here.
The body himself was covered in blood, which represents a bit of a challenge because there may be evidence in the blood on the body. I performed a tape lifting technique on the upper surface of the body and on the back of the body to see whether or not there was any fibres or hairs there that may have been associated with an offender.
But finding that offender was dependent on identifying the victim first. And with no wallet in sight, police took his fingerprints in hope that they might be on file.
The first thing we needed to do was to establish who this person was, and then after that, establish the movements that we could track prior to his arrival.
Of emergency calls had brought them to this location.
What we think is happening is these people, they've made 3 phone calls now and they're moving from phone box to phone box, and we think that maybe they've assaulted them, dumped them there and gone.
Is there any chance you could start some traces on those 3 calls to find out which phone boxes they're using?
Yeah, we know which phone boxes they're using.
3 of those phone calls all were within a couple of kilometre radius of the ambulance station.
Bloke beat up real bad. I just got him from the top.
Right.
Someone there now. I can't get a pulse or any bloody thing on him, so you be quick.
What's your phone number?
Hurry up.
What's your phone number?
Someone beaten up outside the Beenleigh ambulance.
Yeah, outside the Beenleigh ambulance.
Yeah, he's not looking good. We've got to get someone there quick. Look, he's not looking good, right?
Ambulance, emergency only.
Yeah, listen, mate, there's a badly injured bloke lying outside the bloody Beenleigh ambulance centre, mate, on the ground.
There were certainly a number of voices on those tapes. Also, the urgency of the message increased over the particular calls.
Well, he's not breathing, so can you hurry up and fucking get someone out here?
It was difficult to tell whether or not those people were witnesses or possible offenders, but certainly the lack of giving identifying details and a number of other factors made it pretty clear to us that the people who had made those phone calls had some intimate knowledge of how that body came to be at the ambulance station.
Yeah, the ambulance is there, yeah? All right. Where are you?
I'll find out the condition of this bloke.
Where are you ringing from, matey? Hey?
That last call came in nearly an hour after the first, and it was made 25 kilometres away. The crime scene team needed to move quickly.
The telephone boxes were all fingerprinted in terms of the doors, the handsets, all the glass in the booths. We found various tyre impressions, shoe impressions. There were numerous cigarette butts, any one of which could have contained the DNA belonging to an offender.
As potential evidence continued to be collected at the crime scene, The fingerprint taken from the dead man had found a match.
Within about an hour and a half, we had an identification from the Fingerprint Bureau advising me of the name of the deceased. His name was Darryl Lewis.
Darryl Lewis was a petty criminal. But this 34-year-old's criminal history was non-violent, unlike his death.
What was difficult for us to know at that early point in time was what Darryl may have done, which could have possibly led to him being bashed to death.
Ambulance officers were out on another job when the victim was dumped right at the front door of their station.
The victim had been identified as Darryl Lewis, whose last known address was a semi-rural property just a few kilometres from where his body had been dumped.
Knocked on the front door. A male person came to the front door and spoke to us. I asked him, did you know where Darryl Lewis was right now? And he was quite vague in answering, and no, not really, I don't know where he is. And I advised him then that we had some bad news, and that in fact Darryl Lewis had been discovered he was deceased. And the oddest reply that came back was, oh, okay. And it was clear at that stage to me that the person I was speaking to at that stage had some knowledge that something had happened to Darryl Lewis. He then said, wait here a minute, I'll go and get somebody you should talk to. I thought to myself, and I think I commented to the partner I was with, that I think the bloke's going to bring out the murderer. In fact, when the door opened again, it was another male person with the first one, and that male person had obviously also been assaulted. That person was Scott Lewis, who was the brother of the deceased Darryl Lewis, and he was obviously not very well. We went inside the house. I wouldn't have gotten past the first question when he was visibly about to be ill. So I then just told him just to relax and I'll get an ambulance. We contacted the ambulance and they attended the house and took Scott away. I really didn't know what we'd walked into at that stage, because we have one deceased at the ambulance station. We have someone who's obviously been seriously assaulted. We now have two different scenes that we have to investigate. And then we've got the third male person, Paul Schultz, who obviously has some knowledge but is being quite evasive in what he can or intends to tell us about what happened. So yeah, we realised at that stage we had a fairly big job in front of us.
The place was in disarray, bits of broken furniture in there as well, blood staining extending from one end to the other. But I did find a latent shoe sole impression on the lid of the chest freezer, and just directly above the freezer was a manhole access point into the ceiling cavity. I then looked into the ceiling cavity and saw there were other shoe sole impressions similar to that one up in the dust, which then enabled a firm deduction to be reached that someone had been up in the ceiling.
Car covered in blood quickly caught their attention.
Outside in the backyard was a white Holden Commodore. Looking inside that car, it was clear that there was a lot of blood in the back seat area of the vehicle.
There was blood everywhere, not just on that side of the car, on that side of the car, on the boot of the car.
People who aren't experienced in this area are fairly well overwhelmed by the patterns, because it looks like a mess. There certainly was what we class as impact spatter, which is a form of projected blood. There was contact smears, which are those that would be formed from a blood-covered object just coming into contact with something. There were some cast-off patterns there too, which typically come from a weapon of some description, like a baseball bat, swinging around.
What we were able to glean from that was that certainly a very violent assault or assaults had occurred in close proximity to the white Commodore.
That white car was owned by the victim, and its blood-soaked interior was cause for question. As it was taken away for testing, the team searched for other clues as to who had been there that night.
There's lots of bloodied objects, shoe sole impressions, tyre prints, and signs of struggle in the backyard. As I worked my way down the veranda, there was a cigarette butt. There was no other cigarette butts in the area. There was just one on the veranda. So in the context of my examination, I thought this was significant.
A latex glove that was located on the side of the driveway at Lance Road was also seized as an exhibit.
The deceased man's brother had also been attacked. He was found at their Greenbank home this morning. Detectives sealed off Lance Road while they removed evidence and interviewed neighbours.
And about 170 metres north of the property, we found a stain on the side of the roadway which looked to us to be blood. There was a house directly opposite where the stain was located, so we were particularly keen to speak to people in that house.
And he's asked, had we heard anything during the night? And, well, I'd heard cars going down the road.
They told us of seeing a vehicle or vehicles stopping in the vicinity of where we discovered the stain the previous evening.
They went out the gate, turned left, and a short way down, the first car kept going, and the second car pulled over to the side. The brake lights came.
One of those two cars was definitely Daryl Lewis's. Police had just received vital footage.
We seized a security video from the mobile service station at Beenleigh that depicts the victim's vehicle driving through the service station area and then a short time later driving back out of the service station area. The service station is right next to the ambulance station where the deceased was dumped.
But who was driving that car was unknown. The only two witnesses who might be able to tell weren't talking.
Scott Lewis was still in hospital and had been quite seriously injured. Paul Schultz was afraid to be speaking with police following his ordeal.
There were fears. He had fears about what had happened, and that indicated to us that the people who were responsible for this knew where to find him and had made threats to him.
Daryl Lewis was found dead outside an ambulance station. His home had been ransacked, his brother seriously injured, and his flatmate was scared to talk.
If you put yourself in the position of Scott Lewis and Paul Schultz, you've just witnessed a very serious assault that led to the death of, in Scott's case, his brother, and in Paul's case, one of his friends. If you're going to be released by these people who have just killed your friend, and it needs the assurance that you maintain your silence, I don't think that's a very difficult decision for them to make.
But we reinforced to them that they were better off being on the side of the police and working towards the good of what being a member of the public is, rather than have members of a gang chase them for the rest of their lives.
Well, I'd like you now just to take through us basically what happened on that night.
Paul Schultz decided that he would take the side of the police.
Okay, well, it starts in the house.
As part of the investigation, I conducted a video reenactment with witness Paul Schultz at the crime scene at Lance Road.
I was in my room, which is up here.
It assisted us as investigators greatly in getting our minds around exactly what transpired at that particular house out there on the night of the offence.
I've been getting myself ready to get into bed. I've, for some reason, had some sort of idea that there was someone outside the property. I've walked out. I've seen lights. I've got to here. I've seen the headlights. I thought it was Daryl's car, similar headlights. I've stood here for a few minutes, nothing happening. I thought, well, this is something that's not usual. I've opened the door. I've stuck my head out. Someone from behind the headlights said, I hear someone, he might be able to help us. They've asked, is Daryl here? I said, no, he's not. They've said, is Scott here? I said, he's not here either. But I've seen someone in the bushes and they were like this. There was a firearm on them. I've been asked, they said, who are you? I said, I'm Paul. And they said, rightio, Paul, we're not here to hurt you. if you're smart enough and you play the game, you'll get out. You'll get through the night unharmed.
They forced their way into the house and had Paul Schultz sit down and keep his eyes down, and instructed Paul not to look at them.
So I'm sitting down, I'm looking at the TV, and people are filing into the house. There's people all over the show. There's people there, there's people in my room, you know. Again, there's people here. People are going through the ceiling.
And it was quite apparent that the perpetrators had gone to some length to try and find whatever it was they were looking for.
The person warns me of the situation that is going on involving the people that I am sharing the place with. Tells me that they're in a bit of shit and there's a few people that want to come round and have a bit of a go at them. And it'd be to my best interest to get myself out of here, because the next people will probably just come through and pop everyone. They were worse to that effect. I kept my eyes on the TV as I was told, and it was some time until the car entered the property. Everyone in the house vacated through that door, and the bloke who was standing behind me, he moved himself to that door and he stood facing to the outside. As I was sitting there, I could hear quite a major beating going on in the backyard. It went for a while. It got pretty loud. A person came through the door, said, "Right, we're going. He's coming with us." He pointed at me. I've been marched out to about here. I seen motion, and I seen Daryl's legs go out. He dropped down like that, and within an instant, there was someone right in front of me who had their shirt like this with a baseball bat in my face, saying, "You've seen too much, you've seen too much." All right. I'm standing here like this. I've said, "I haven't seen anything, I've seen nothing." He goes, "Turn around." So I've turned around. He said, "Get on your knees." All right. I've got on my knees. I've done this. And then I didn't hear anything more of him. I was here for about 5 minutes, I suppose, not even that, I don't know, a matter of minutes. I was picked up from my knees. The car was kind of where it is, but it's kind of more straight on. They've opened the door and they've put me in, and they've told me to sit there with me, like looking at the deck. Daryl was bundled in the best they could, ended up in the back. His head's behind the driver's seat where my feet are. I've slipped my feet out of there. In the process, my thongs have stayed there.
In the second vehicle,
at a later stage.
Once Daryl had been put back in the vehicle, Paul Schultz tells us that he then was much more subdued.
His physical condition deteriorated quite rapidly. His breathing became shallower to the point where he had stopped breathing.
Paul made it known to the driver of the vehicle and the other occupants that Daryl wasn't in a very good condition.
Get out!
Paul Schultz was then driven to a number of locations that he was not aware of.
He was then reunited with Scott Lewis.
They were given a beer. They were told in no uncertain terms that there would be consequences if they were to speak with police or anyone else about what had occurred that night. Scott and Paul Schultz were then allowed to go home in the White Holden.
So detectives knew what happened that night, but still didn't know who was involved. That piece of the puzzle was about to be solved by forensics. A gang of men had raided the property where Paul Schultz lived. They were looking for something and were prepared to go to any lengths to get it, even murder.
The information from Paul Schultz was that the offenders, when they arrived, were armed with an array of weapons, including shotguns, pistols, baseball bats. And Schultz also mentioned that they were wearing disposable gloves.
When police had searched the property, they had found a glove on the driveway.
Upon fingerprint examination, our experts were able to obtain a latent fingerprint on the inside of that glove.
The glove had been dusted with powder, photographed, and certain ridges traced. This information was then fed into the computer, and in this case, there was one perfect match.
We were able to identify Stephen Avis, who we knew to be the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Finks Motorcycle Club. The Sergeant-at-Arms was generally responsible for order and discipline within the club.
And so we had his fingerprint that was recovered from the inside of a rubber glove. Further to that, his DNA profile was also located on a cigarette butt at the front door of the crime scene. So that led us to believe that he had involvement and complicity in the murder of Darryl Lewis.
And so we knew that significant assault had occurred by members of an outlaw motorcycle gang.
But for now, police decided not to arrest Avis. He was one of a number of gang members there that night.
We wanted to maintain the secrecy and the integrity of our investigation. We didn't want to show our hand early, and we wanted to be prepared with the course of action that we wished to take against these people. And as we knew, there was a lot more people involved than Steve Avis.
However, there was one other suspect.
When we were able to convince Paul that that he would be safe and he didn't have to feel threatened in this particular situation, he prepared a confit for us. Confit uses a computer-generated image of the facial features of a person of interest.
But his name and the motive for the murder remained a mystery.
Scott Lewis, the man that could hold all the leads to solving the case, remains in hospital, dangerously ill and still unable to talk. Detectives were hoping the 33-year-old could identify his brother Darryl's killers.
I'm giving no resistance to anyone here. Guys tell me what you want me to do and I'll just do it.
One of the approaches that I adopted was to have Paul convince Scott that the best way forward was to give the police as much information as they possibly could to allow us to do our job. And largely as a result of Paul Schultz helping us in that regard, Scott Lewis then opened up completely.
I closed the gates and jumped back in the car, and myself and Darryl drove up the driveway.
Not long after Scott Lewis left hospital, he ignored the repercussions of the offenders and told police his version of what happened the night his brother was murdered.
We stopped the car and approximately about here. I opened this door here, got out, and saw a man standing there. I reached down, picked up a bar or something that was lying here, and I said, "Who the hell are you and what do you want?" And he said, "Drop it or I'll shoot." I thought about it for a minute, then dropped it. Another man came up from this side here, and I turned. He says, "I've got one on you." He said, "Don't move." He held some storage shed keys up towards me and he dangled them that, and he said, "You've got my bike." I said, "Which bike?" And he said, "My bike." He punched me in the face. After that, I was hit with something, and I was lying on the ground about here, about here.
Scott was hit across the knee with a bat, fractured his knee. He was hit to the head and other areas of his body and was quite seriously injured.
As I tried to get up, my knee kept sliding down my leg. He said to me, "Stay where you are, it's fucking broken."
What could you see then? Do you know where these people were?
Approximately we're over that bloke, where that bloke was there was where Darryl was assaulted. I'd say there was, facing this way, 5 or 6 blokes around him, hitting him, and he was throwing his hands back, saying no, 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 trying to protect himself at the time.
During that assault, Scott's brother, Darryl, received quite extensive injuries. So Scott then decided that giving the information to the Finks was the best option.
They wanted to be taken to our storage shed. Daryl was sort of bent down a bit more, going like that. He had his hand here and was putting his leg in the boot of the car. I said to them, not in the fucking boot, and I put my hand up here and slammed the boot.
As we know, Daryl was thrown into the car with Paul Schultz. In that same car were 3 Finks members. Scott followed in another car, but neither vehicle made it to the storage shed.
All thoughts of recovering the bike there and then that night, I think, were shelved, and it became an issue of self-preservation on the part of all the people who had been involved.
Investigators were now sure they had the motive for the murder of Daryl Lewis, but they needed to find out whose bike it was and where it was hidden. Scott Lewis finally revealed the address, a storage shed half an hour's drive from their property.
Once we had that information, we took out a search warrant at the storage shed and we seized the motorcycle parts that were contained in that shed. Those parts were absolutely critical to the investigation because those parts were actually the motive for why this whole incident had occurred. We then, through further inquiries, managed to find a person who had been a mechanic who had worked on that motorcycle. And when that person looked at the parts at the police station, he was able, from certain marks and identifying particulars, to conclusively say that they were the parts on the motorcycle that he'd worked on, which had belonged to the de facto president of the Finks, Stephen Cranny. Stephen Cranny certainly had enough influence to be able to have up to 18 members of his club come with him to recover his stolen motorbike.
Detectives had 2 suspects and 1 unidentified Finks member. It was now time to turn up the heat.
They needed to consider whether they were prepared to stay staunch and not talk, or whether they were going to look after their own interests and benefit themselves.
A discarded glove, a cigarette butt, and some stolen Harley-Davidson bike parts had led police to 2 suspects in the murder of Daryl Lewis. But Stephen Cranny and his sergeant of arms were not the only ones there the night Daryl Lewis died.
Once we know we're looking at the Finks Outlaw Motorcycle Club, then obviously there's a lot of police intelligence available to us in terms of who the members are and who their associates are and where they live and what their occupations are, their motor vehicles, those types of issues.
In a short time, police had a list of names.
The issue for us then was to determine who of these members had been involved. We had 2 witnesses, Scott Lewis and Paul Schultz, who we assumed would have been able to identify people who had been involved, at least some of the people who had been involved.
We always believed that the suspects for this matter would not cooperate at all with police. The possibility of them participating in a physical lineup was always very remote. So the next best avenue is to create one ourselves.
Through various sources, police obtained footage of the Finks and other outlaw motorcycle clubs and their members at a hotel.
And Paul Schultz and Scott Lewis were able to identify certain members.
They included the 2 known suspects, Stephen Cranny and Steve Avis.
And so it was time for us to pull in the people that we knew we could prove had been involved in that murder.
A sledgehammer, their only calling card, 50 cars roared out of Logan Police Headquarters, all bound for dawn raids, all waiting for the radio call to pounce.
Intex is go.
We believe that a stolen Harley-Davidson motorcycle is the motive for the murder, and we believe that that's what culminated in his death.
The bike was owned by the Finks motorcycle gang. Police believe the kill a revenge attack. Today their clubhouse was scoured. One gang member arrested and charged with murder, 41-year-old Jeffrey Lloyd Nelson from Southport. Police charging and questioning dozens.
It was a large-scale operation. Numerous houses of Finks members and associates were subject of search warrants. There was firearms seized, there was weaponry along the lines of bats, sticks, similar type items that were seized as a result of the execution of those warrants.
So as a result of those initial round of raids, 4 people were arrested: Stephen Cranny, Jeff Nelson, Mark Gibson and Steve Avis.
The arrest of these 4 for murder and other offences was just the beginning.
It was important for us, once we'd locked up the original 4, to make sure that we had a solid plan for how we might gather further evidence and strengthen the brief against them and identify and charge other people who might have been involved.
Yeah, what have we got? Yeah, we've got Cranny at Carrara. There's 2 there.
The next step was to check all mobile telephone records of those in custody with other Finks members on that night.
We were perusing their phone activity and identifying who they were contacting.
They rang as well?
There was obviously a large amount of telephone activity between the persons that we knew were involved and suspected of being involved immediately before, during and after the incident.
And through an electronic process, we were able to track the movements of those telephones, which then gave us a particular area that they were operating from.
Certain members of the Finks had moved as a group from an area that included the Lewis property to the ambulance station and then back to their clubhouse, some 25 kilometres away. Not far from which was the phone box where the last emergency call was placed.
Telephone records became critical. They showed the associations between relevant mobile phones, particularly owned by relevant people at relevant times.
So police now had a further list of suspects, but as yet they didn't know exactly what role each of them played, particularly who was in the car when Daryl was bashed for the last time. And getting any of the gang members to talk was impossible.
By virtue of their philosophies, they don't wish to cooperate with authorities, they don't provide statements or do interviews with authorities. What we really ultimately needed to achieve was to infiltrate the cone of silence that we were being encountered with and to obtain the cooperation of one of the people that were actually a participant in the events that night.
We were able to put the most pressure on those that were sitting in custody, because they knew that they were facing murder charges. So the offer was there that if someone was to come forward and to give us the real story of what had occurred that night, then that would be a matter that could be taken into consideration in relation to the sentencing of that particular offender, depending on their role in the matter. They needed to consider whether they were prepared to stay staunch and not talk, or whether they were going to look after their own interests and benefit themselves. And so we consciously made the solicitors aware, certainly by producing evidence, certainly the telephone evidence, that there was a substantial body of evidence there implicating them, and that the chance of conviction was probably reasonably good.
So good that 5 months after Daryl Lewis died, the 4 members of the Finks were committed to trial for his murder.
And so, by applying that pressure, we arrived at a situation where one of those members sitting in jail, through their solicitor, indicated to us that they wanted to tell us what had occurred that night. And that person was Stephen Cranny.
I'm going, what the hell's going on here? Everything's gone to, turned from bloody champagne to shit just like that.
It was now 18 months since Daryl Lewis was murdered. And during that entire time, the outlaw code of silence remained strong. But now the de facto president, whose stolen bike had been the catalyst for the actions on that night, was about to live up to the name of the club and become a true Fink.
A bloke that I know casually, I don't even know real well, told me that if I wanted to find my bike, these Lewises had it, was still in a shed at Springwood somewhere. We figured, well, first of all, we've got to get us the keys to the shed. It's obviously in a lock-up shed. We have to get the keys to the shed. That was the plan. At no stage, anyone was supposed to have been bloody hurt or killed or anything like that. Scott Lewis, I punched him in the mouth because he sort of threatened me with the iron bar. Glenn Laycock came over, hit him in the head with a baseball bat, hit him in the leg first, which dropped him to his knees and then clubbed him with the baseball bat. Lewis has tried to get up off the ground. I've told Lewis, look, sit on the ground because I could see his fucking leg, like he hit him in the kneecap, mate. You could see the fucking kneecap just fucking swallowed up.
He said to me, stay where you are, it's fucking broken.
You'll be right, just sit there. And then Laycock went over. He was the one that threatened Schultz.
He had their shirt like this with a baseball bat in my face, saying, you've seen too much, you've seen too much.
And then he went over and started whacking Darryl Lewis around the legs with the bat. Then Ava said, well, let's get out of here, there's been too much fucking noise sort of thing. I said, you're right, let's go to the shed and get my fucking bike.
Have you had any conversation with Steve Avis regarding the fact that he's left a glove there with his fingerprint?
I said, how the fucking hell did you leave your glove there? He said he left it on the roof of the car and it must have fallen off.
As for the cigarette butt that contained his DNA...
No, he reckons he's planted it, all that sort of shit in the garbage.
Is that what he said?
Yeah. Everyone got into their cars. Lou Stokes got into the driver's seat of the car. Glenn Laycock got into the passenger seat of the car. Jeff got in the back and there was Lewis and Schultz in the Commodore.
How was Darryl Lewis physically when he was put in the back of that car?
He was still fighting and kicking. Off we go. And I noticed the Commodore wasn't behind us. I took just about to turn around when they came around the corner. They come up beside me and they said, oh, Jesus, they told me, they said, oh, we think he's dead. And I've gone, I shit myself. I said, what do you mean he's fucking dead? What's happened? Because when he left here, there was bugger all wrong with him. From there to where they're telling me he's fucking dead. And I've just fucking hit the panic buttons. I said, well, get into the fucking ambulance at Beenleigh.
Certainly there was a degree of panic began to set in, and that there were a number of phone calls were made from different members of the club starting to talk to each other that they had a situation developing. And that was that they had a seriously injured person in the back of a vehicle they'd stolen, and they had to do something in order to get this person some sort of medical attention or he was going to die.
The next thing I knew, they were back at my place. They'd come back and said the ambulance station was closed. They'd thrown him in the front yard, rung the fucking bell and rang AAA. I've then got in my car, gone back up past the Beenleigh ambulance station. There's no one there. The place is in darkness. I've then rung AAA myself.
Ambulance emergency only. Yeah, listen, mate, there's a badly injured bloke lying outside the bloody Beenleigh ambulance centre, mate, on the ground.
Well, that's that call you've got of me on the ambulance. That's when I rang them. I've then gone back to my place. I'm going, what the hell's going on here? Everything's gone to, turned from bloody champagne to shit, just like that. I did not know he'd been dragged out of the car.
No.
When I left the house, he was fucking hurt.
When did you first find out he'd been dragged out of that car?
When we got back to my house and Jeff told me.
Okay.
What I was told at the time was that Laycock had dragged him out and took to him with the bat.
Do you recall what his words were?
Just bashed him with the bat.
Okay. And did Laycock say anything in response to this?
Not really.
Stephen Cranny told police Glenn Laycock had struck the fatal blows. but he hadn't been in the car when it happened. So police desperately needed a bikie to come forward and give evidence.
We still needed a further witness who was actually present when the fatal blows were delivered on Lewis at the side of the road.
The raids began early this morning. Warrants were executed on 22 properties from Warrangarry in the south to Eagleby in the north, police seeking members of the Finks motorcycle gang. One by one, arrests were made. Charges varied from murder to kidnapping and drug offences.
Among those eventually arrested and charged, Glenn Laycock, who had allegedly bashed Darryl with the bat, and Lou Stokes, the driver of Darryl's car, who bore a striking similarity to the comfit.
Yeah, that looks like Lou Stokes.
Jeff Nelson, the third occupant of the car, was already in jail awaiting his trial for the murder of Darryl Lewis.
Why did you actually decide to come forward to the police to make this statement today?
Why? Because I sat in jail for 2 years for something I didn't do. And it was an accident, like got out of control, and the other bloke saved my life, and I just couldn't stand up and give him up.
That other bloke was Glenn Laycock.
So after being in there 2 years, I said to him,
The two Finks members had been mates for 13 years.
Just take your time.
I said to him about getting up and telling the truth, but he was sort of too scared to.
We, as an investigative team, were very excited by the prospect of Nelson cooperating with the authorities. He could provide direct evidence and direct testimony as to what he witnessed on the side of the road of the actions of Laycock in the killing of Lewis.
But your other line, Darryl just went berserk again, just went crazy.
Shut him the fuck up!
Car stopped. Trying to hit the handle, and I've come out the car. He's on top of me. And then Glenn's come out and dragged him off me, and then Glenn's given him a couple of thumps on the head with a baseball bat.
And we believe that it was these injuries that ultimately resulted in Darryl's death.
What are your feelings towards Glenn Laycock?
Just pissed off that he never said anything earlier.
Okay.
Jeffrey Nelson was today jailed for 9 years after pleading guilty to manslaughter and deprivation of liberty.
I'll just give you a minute.
The Supreme Court heard Nelson was involved in struggles with Darryl, but was not the bikie who repeatedly and viciously beat the 34-year-old unconscious.
Do you want to have a drink of water or something?
No, I'll be right.
Jeff Nelson had also turned Crown witness because his health was failing.
Because Laycock hadn't said anything.
After serving a minimum sentence of 2.5 years, he was released. He died soon after.
In the end, Laycock was convicted of murder. Lou Stokes, the driver of the car, he was convicted of manslaughter.
Stephen Cranny's murder charge was dropped. He and 5 other Finks members were convicted of various offences ranging from grievous bodily harm, deprivation of liberty and entering a dwelling with intent. All 6 are currently out of jail.
I think it was a very good result.
Thanks forever!
As a team of investigators, it's always good for us to be able to have the evidence forensically obtained, matching closely with the evidence obtained from human sources throughout the investigation, matching with information and intelligence that might have been analysed and used in the investigation.
It's difficult to get convictions against outlaw motorcycle gangs because of the fear factor. So for us to get such a good result and secure some lengthy convictions was a substantial result for law enforcement agencies.
If you know, if it hadn't been for fucking Laycock, none of this bullshit would have happened, you know.
On looking back at this particular case, it's hard not to note some concern that people are prepared to take another human life for the sake of a motorcycle. I don't think the person's background, the type of person that was the victim in this particular case, bears any relevance. The fact remains that a group of individuals here were prepared to take another human life for the sake of recovering a stolen motorcycle.
They call it Ohio 1995 Cold Case Solved. That's the headline, the tagline, the hook to drag you in. But if you talk to the people who lived through it, who smelled the wet earth under the searchlights, who screamed a name into the black trees until their voices broke, they'll tell you, nothing about this feels solved. Not then, not now, not ever. Picture this, December 3rd, 1995, a small town in Ohio, the kind of place that only makes banned teen toy when something goes terribly, violently wrong. The air is razor cold, the sky low and colorless. Christmas lights hang on porches, blinking weakly in the early dark, trying to pretend everything is normal. At 10:41 p.m., the first 911 call comes in. A car, abandoned, engine running, driver's door open, dome light on, radio humming static. No driver in sight, no footprints leading away in the fresh frost. Just a silent vehicle on County Road 7, like someone stepped out of their life and vanished mid-breath. The car belongs to 17-year-old Emily Hart, high school senior, waitress at the local diner, softball co-captain, perfect attendance, bright future, all in tu nyamchang utayung kimokdutre bin muk. She clocked out from the diner at 9:58 p.m. She should have been home before 10:15. She never arrived. A state trooper spots the car first. He pulls over, lights off, heart thumping with that low animal alert cops get when something is wrong, but the what hasn't stepped out of the shadows yet. He walks up slow. Frost crunches under his boots. The exhaust creeps out from the back of the sedan in slow gray ribbons. He looks in, keys in the ignition, driver's seat pulled forward the way Emily likes it, her purse on the passenger seat, open but not rifled, wallet inside, cash inside, lipstick rolling on the floor mat, a styrofoam cup tipped over, Diet Coke bleeding into the carpet. What's missing is Emily. No jacket crumpled on the seat, no backpack, no sign of a struggle, no broken glass, no blood, no skid marks on the road, just a car running itself empty on a back road, and a silence so thick it feels like a held breath. The trooper calls it in. Possible abandoned vehicle, possible missing driver. His voice is steady, professional, but his eyes keep scanning the tree line, the culvert, the ditch. You don't leave your car like this out here. Not in this cold, not with the engine still running and your whole life sitting in the front seat. Dispatch rings Emily's home. Her mother picks up. There's that sleepy confusion, that fragile moment when she still believes this is about a parking ticket, a fender bender, something small. The dispatcher's tone is calm. Too calm. Ma'am, do you know where your daughter is tonight? No, she should be home. She left work an hour ago. She called at 9:45, said she was on her way, that she was tired, that the late shift was killing her. That was the last time her mother heard her voice. Within 30 minutes, the blue and red lights turned County Road 7 into a crime scene postcard. Deputies, cruisers, reflective vests, yellow tape unfurling like a warning line between normal life and whatever this is about to become. The town's only news van pulls up, antennas stretching into the sky. The words start forming in whispered clumps. Matt Tick Beyond, girl missing, cold night, empty car. Midnight, the sheriff arrives. Heavy coat, coffee breath, tired eyes. He walks the scene slow, methodical, checks the ditches. Has the troopers fan out with flashlights, beams slicing through the weeds, cutting across the barbed wire fence line, probing the edge of the woods. They call her name into the darkness. Emily! Emily! Nothing answers but the wind. They find nothing. No drag marks, no dropped shoe, no tire tracks crossing the soft shoulder, no sign that anyone else stopped here at all. It's as if she evaporated out of the driver's seat, left the engine idling, and stepped into thin air. Back at the Hart house, the lights are on in every room. Neighbors crowd the living room, hands wrapped around mugs of untouched coffee. Emily's little brother sits at the kitchen table staring at the phone as if sheer will can force it to ring with good news. Her father paces, jaw clenched, checking his watch like time itself is misbehaving. The sheriff knocks. He enters that house like a man bringing in a storm. He explains what they know so far, which is almost nothing. He doesn't say the thing everyone is thinking. This is the kind of setup you see on TV when the anchor leans forward and says cold case with that practiced chill in his voice. For now, it's still fresh, still active missing person, but something in the atmosphere has shifted. The town has crossed a line and there's no going back. Outside, the December wind pushes against the Hart family's windows. On a lonely strip of County Road 7, under a sky that doesn't care, Emily's car cools down, engine ticking softly, until all that's left is a dead battery, frozen air, and a story that is just beginning to write itself in whispers, in rumors, in frantic questions with no answers. And somewhere, in the dark fields beyond the reach of the flashlights, a secret lies down and gets comfortable, ready to wait years, decades, until someone dares to call it what it really is, a cold case that refuses to stay buried. Morning doesn't arrive gently. It slams into the town like a door kicked off its hinges. One night there was worry, confusion, a car on a lonely road. By sunrise, there's a new reality. 17-year-old Emily Hart is officially missing, and every kitchen radio in town is hissing the same breaking news. Cold case in the making. Mat Tik Bien Ngay Trindung Quen Thuok. Coffee pots sputter to life. The local AM station interrupts the farm report. The anchor's voice is too bright, too calm, as he reads the bulletin. Authorities are searching for a local teenager after her car was found abandoned on County Road 7. The words drift over bacon grease and newspaper ink and hit people in the chest like a slow punch. This doesn't happen here, not in their quiet corner of Ohio. At the diner where Emily pulled her last shift, the neon sign flickers on, buzzing faintly in the cold. Inside, the clatter of plates sounds wrong, hollow. Her apron still hangs on its hook in the back, a smear of last night's coffee on the hem, name tag crooked, Emily. Someone has to move it, but no one does. It hangs there like a question mark. Regulars file in, slower than usual, eyes darting to the door, to the booth by the window, to the empty space where she should be. A trucker orders eggs and doesn't touch them. The cook burns a batch of toast because he's listening too hard to the radio. The waitresses talk in low, urgent bursts. She called her mom, right? They found her car with the engine still on. No, I heard the keys were pulled. The trooper turned it off. Rumor mutates with each retelling, twisting into something sharper, stranger. Across town, the school's PA system crackles. The principal's voice comes on, thin, reverberating down cinder-block hallways. Students, please listen carefully. One of our own, senior Emily Hart, has been reported missing. Desks creak as kids shift, eyes widening, pens freezing mid-scribble. Someone makes a nervous joke. Someone else snaps, "Shut up, man!" Because this is not a ghost story, not a dare, not some urban legend about a hitchhiker on a back road. This is a girl they sat next to in class on Friday. Her locker is already a focal point, a magnet for fear. By lunchtime, there are flowers tucked through the vents, notes jammed into the cracks, a photo of her taped to the door. The shot is from last summer, sun in her hair, chin tilted, half laughing at whoever was behind the camera. Underneath, someone scrawls in bright marker, "Come home, Em." The ink bleeds a little, like the letters are crying. While the town gulps down its shock with stale coffee and cafeteria milk, the sheriff's office transforms. The break room becomes a makeshift command post. Phones ring without rest. Deputies hunch over a map of the county pinned to a corkboard, lines drawn in red from the diner to the point on County Road 7 where the trooper found her car idling under the stars. It's only a few miles. You could jog it in 20 minutes. Somehow, inside that short stretch of darkness, a problem has appeared with no visible edges. Detectives fan out like reporters chasing a lead. First stop, the Hart House. The front yard is already crowded. Neighbors in heavy coats hover on the sidewalk, hands tucked into pockets, eyes fixed on the front door as if Emily might walk out at any second, sleep rumpled and annoyed, saying it was all a misunderstanding. Inside, the living room is a blur of voices and movement, tissues passed, prayers whispered, questions thrown like darts at a dartboard with no center. Emily's mother sits on the sofa, a blanket around her shoulders, her hair hastily pulled back. Her eyes are swollen and wild, darting to the window every time a car passes. Her father paces the room like he's wearing grooves into the carpet, one hand gripping a coffee mug he doesn't drink from, the other clenching and unclenching at his side. The lead detective, a man named Mercer with stubble on his jaw and too little sleep in his eyes, takes a seat across from them. His voice is low, controlled. "Walk me through last night," he says. "Every phone call, every message, every plan." They repeat it, again. Emily left for her shift before dark. She called at 9:45, said she was cashing out, that she'd be home soon, that she was exhausted. "Did she sound scared?" Mercer asks. "No," her mother says. "Just tired. She was complaining about tips." A faint, broken smile at the memory. She said a guy left her a 5 and told her she had a movie star smile. She rolled her eyes about it. "A guy," Mercer repeats. "Did she say what he looked like?" Her mother shakes her head. She was already moving on to the next thing. That's how she talked. Fast, one thing to the next. Fast, one thing to the next. Last night, her words moved quicker than the danger waiting in the road. From the Hart House, detectives move to the diner. They pull the manager into a back booth, notebook open, pen tapping. They ask for last night's schedule, the receipt tapes, any security footage. The manager's face crumples. "We don't have cameras," he says. "Place like this, we never needed them." "Maybe now you do," one deputy mutters under his breath. They line up staff, one by one, co-workers, the cook, the dishwasher, the new girl who started last week and barely knew Emily at all. Did she argue with anyone? Did she seem off? Was there anyone hanging around, lingering? A pattern begins to emerge, faint at first. A man, mid-30s, maybe older, in a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low, sat at the counter, ordered coffee, then another, stayed through the end of Emily's shift, asked a few personal questions that made her pull a face behind his back. "Creepy," one waitress says, twisting the strap of her apron. Not enough to throw him out, but, you know. "Did you get a name?" Mercer asks. She shakes her head. "He paid cash." "Car?" She hesitates. I think I saw him get into a pickup, dark, but it was late. It was cold. I was trying to get out of there." The words go on the whiteboard back at the command post in block letters. "Creepy mail. Possible pickup." By mid-afternoon, the search is mobilized. This is no longer just a missing person call. This is a full-blown incident, a Sok Kangdong event, the kind that gets state police on the phone asking how they can help, the kind that makes TV stations send their satellite trucks rumbling down highways toward a tiny dot on the map. Volunteers gather at the community center. They sign in, grab orange vests, get assigned sectors like pieces on a grid. Old men who hunted these woods for decades, teenagers in school hoodies, off-duty nurses. Every face carries the same expression, a tight, brittle determination, like if they just walk hard enough, shout loud enough, they can bend reality back into shape and put Emily back where she belongs. Out on County Road 7, the blue and red strobes that painted the darkness last night have given way to daylight and tape. Yellow crime scene tape flutters from fence posts and roadside markers, cordoning off the patch of asphalt and gravel where the car sat. Now it's been towed. The exact rectangle of its presence is marked with spray paint and small numbered flags. Evidence techs move in slow, deliberate circles. They photograph everything: a cigarette butt, a scrap of paper, a scuffed patch of dirt, the spot where the bracelet turned up, shining dull in the frost, the impression of tires on the shoulder, though it's hard to tell if they're from her car, the trooper's cruiser, or something else entirely. A reporter in a heavy coat stands just outside the tape, microphone in hand, eyes fixed on the scene. "This is the last place anyone knows for sure that Emily Hart was," she says into the camera. Her car, abandoned, engine running, door open, no sign of the young woman herself. Authorities are calling this a suspicious disappearance. Locals are calling it something else, a nightmare. Behind her, a deputy crouches, squinting at the ground. Something has caught his eye, a faint mark on the asphalt, a curved line, small crescent scratches. Not skid marks, not a crash. More like the imprint of rubber soles pivoting hard, a heel turning, a struggle, a stumble. He photographs it anyway. In a case like this, even the asphalt feels like it's trying to talk. They pull the trooper who found the car into an interview room and go over his first impressions in microscopic detail. Did the radio station stand out? What was the volume? Was the seat pushed all the way forward? Was anything in the glove box? It all matters, or it might not. That's the thing about an investigation like this. You don't know what the Manhmoy Ki La is until after you've missed it. By evening, the search party lines look like something from a war documentary. Volunteers moving shoulder to shoulder through fields gone brown with winter, calling Emily's name until the syllables taste like dust. Dogs weave back and forth, tugging their handlers toward scents that lead to nothing. A fox den, a discarded jacket, a patch of soil where someone dumped trash years ago. The sun slides down behind bare tree branches, the sky bruises purple, and still there's no sign of her. No discarded shoe, no torn fabric, no trail of anything that looks like her. At the Hart House, someone has set up a table in the front yard. Flyers roll off a borrowed copier in stacks, the ink still damp. Emily Hart, missing. Last seen December 3rd. A school photo in the center, her smile surrounded by words like beloved daughter, softball player, waitress, friend. Neighbors stop by to grab handfuls of flyers, pressing them to their chests for a moment as if absorbing some part of her before walking away. Cars slow as they pass. Some honk, a feeble gesture of support. Others keep their eyes straight ahead, because looking at that house feels like staring directly into the sun. Dangerous, blinding, full of a heat they are not equipped to handle. Inside, the TV is tuned to the local news, but the sound is low. Emily's mother doesn't need to hear strangers narrate her fear. She already knows the script. Missing teen, cold night, car on the roadside, no witnesses, no answers. Her father sits with a notebook in his lap, writing down names, every person Emily mentioned in the last month. Every customer she talked about at dinner, every minor complaint, every strange remark. He flips through the pages, searching for a pattern that refuses to appear. The phone rings. False hope spikes like adrenaline. A relative asking what they can do. A reporter fishing for a quote. A neighbor offering to drop off food. No, thank you. We have too much already. No, we'll call if we need anything. Late that night, when the house has finally gone quiet and the volunteers have gone home to their own beds, when the command post lights are dimmed and the reporters have filed their first day stories, the town lies awake. Parents stare at their kids' bedroom doors. Teenagers scroll, replaying their last conversation with Emily in their heads. That joke in English class, that eye roll in the parking lot, that text they didn't answer. And out there, on County Road 7, the darkness closes back in over the place where the headlights glared and the sirens wailed, the tape flutters, the paint on the asphalt glows faint in the moonlight, the road looks ordinary again. That's the cruelest part. From a distance, it's just a strip of asphalt cutting between fields and trees like it has for years. A way home, a shortcut, a forgettable bit of geography on a map. It doesn't wear a warning label, it doesn't glow red. But the people who drove it last night, who saw the cruisers and the flash of cameras, will never see it as ordinary again. To them, it's a crime scene stretched out across miles, a timeline paved in tar and questions. Cold case, the news anchors will call it later, when the leads dry up and the search parties shrink and the file is moved from one cabinet to another. Sok Kangdong, Matik Bian. But right now, in that first hard morning and the long, frantic day that follows, no one is ready for those words. They're still clinging to others. Found soon. Safe. Alive. The story doesn't care. It has already chosen its pace. Slow, relentless, a drip of clues, a flood of fear, a screaming silence where answers should be. And somewhere between the diner's flickering neon and the Hart family's living room lamp burning through the night, the truth about what happened to Emily settles deeper into the dark, just out of reach, waiting to see how long these people will chase it before they let someone tell them it's over. Day 2 rolls in heavy, a gray sky pressing down on a town that hasn't really slept. The first wave of shock is gone. What's left is something sharper, edgier, the kind of fear that makes people lock doors they never used to lock and look twice at every headlight sliding past their bedroom windows. At the sheriff's office, the phones are already ringing when Mercer walks in, coat still damp from the mist outside. Tips, rumors, half-remembered conversations. A kid swears he saw Emily at the mall last week with someone older. A woman insists she heard a scream near the river, but she can't say when. A truck driver claims he picked up a girl hitchhiking on the highway, until his story changes and the details fall apart under questioning. Noise, so much noise. Somewhere in there might be the truth, but right now it's all buzz, static like that radio in her car, humming to no one. Mercer knows where he has to go first. The boyfriend. That's always how these stories start in the cop playbook. Lovers, husbands, exes. The people closest to the heart are usually closest to the crime. That's what the statistics say anyway. Jason Miller lives 4 streets over from the Hart house in a split level with peeling paint and a basketball hoop that leans a little. When Mercer and a deputy pull up, Jason is already on the front step, eyes red, jaw clenched like he's been waiting for this knock since dawn. He's 17, star pitcher, the kind of kid who was supposed to be thinking about college scouts and ERA, not alibis. Today he looks smaller somehow. The varsity jacket hangs off him like it belongs to someone else. They bring him down to the station, not in cuffs, not yet, just a, "we need to talk." The kind of phrase that sounds harmless until you're sitting under fluorescent lights and there's a recorder on the table between you. Mercer doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. "Tell me about last night," he says. "All of it." Jason's leg won't stop bouncing. His hands are knotted together so tight his knuckles are white. He stares at the tabletop as he talks. He and Emily had a fight 2 days ago. Stupid stuff about him blowing off one of her texts to hang out with his buddies. They made up, he swears. "She was fine," he says. "She was joking around last night. She said she'd call me when she got home." "Did she?" "No, I fell asleep. I woke up at like 11 something and saw the time and texted her, but there was nothing back." His voice cracks on that last word. "Where were you between 9 and midnight?" Mercer asks. "At home, studying. My parents were there. Ask them." They already have. Mom says yes, he was at the dining room table with his books spread out. Dad says mostly, yeah, he was around. They watched some TV together. He went back and forth. Alibi, but not a lockbox. "Did she mention anyone bothering her?" Mercer pushes. "Anyone hanging around the diner?" Jason hesitates. She said there was this dude at the counter who kept staring. Asked her what time she got off." "Did she describe him?" "Just said he was gross, older, like not her age, dark jacket, hat. I told her to have someone walk her to her car." His eyes flash, anger finally surfacing through the grief. Why didn't they? Why didn't somebody go out with her? No good answer for that. People are busy, people are tired, it was cold, it was late. You don't expect a horror story to start in a strip of parking lot you've walked 100 times. Mercer lets the silence sit for a second, then asks the question that shifts the air in the room. "Did you ever think about breaking up with her?" Jason's head snaps up. "What? No. Did she talk about breaking up with you? No. You ever get physical? Push her, grab her? Jesus, no. His chair scrapes back. Tears spill over now, hot, angry. You think I did something to her? I would never. I have known her since we were 5. We carved our initials in the bleachers in middle school. We were going to get out of here together. His voice collapses on that word. Together. Mercer watches him closely, cataloging every twitch, every pause. Teenagers lie, so do grieving lovers. But there's a rawness in this kid's face that doesn't feel rehearsed. Still, the tape rolls, the questions keep coming. When it's over, they swab Jason's cheek for DNA. Routine, they say. He doesn't argue. Word gets out before he even leaves the building. It always does. At the high school, whispers Spiral. Jason's name slips into sentences next to suspect and police station and motive. A rumor takes shape that he failed a lie detector test. He didn't. They haven't even given him one, but rumor doesn't care about truth. It cares about speed. While one part of town is chewing on that, another part is combing the fields again. Daylight search, second sweep. This time, they go wider. They check drainage ditches beyond the initial radius. Spread into thickets of leafless brush where the ground is soft and deceptive. Boots sink. Dogs whine. Halfway through the afternoon, one of the volunteers, a middle-aged man with a bad knee and a blaze-orange hat, calls out, "Hey, over here!" He's standing at the edge of a shallow ditch, a mile from where the car was found. Something pale is half buried in mud, caught in dead grass. For a moment, everyone's heart stops. It's a shoe, small white, a girl's. Gloves come out, cameras click. The shoe is lifted gently, bagged, tagged. It's scuffed and dirty, and soaked through from snowmelt. Could belong to anyone, could be nothing, could be everything. They bring it to the Hart house. Her mother holds the evidence bag like it's radioactive. Slowly, she turns it in her hands. "She had a pair like this," she whispers. "I think this might be hers." Think, might. Those words are anchors and balloons dragging you down while floating you nowhere. The shoe goes to the lab. They swab inside, hoping for skin cells, hoping for DNA, hoping for any trace of her. But hope doesn't turn plastic and fabric into proof. Not yet. By the end of day 2, the command post wall is a mess of notes. Diner, car, County Road 7, shoe, boyfriend, creepy mail, pickup. And now a new line, witness shadow by road. He comes in just before sunset, hat in hand, eyes jittery. Says he didn't think it was important at first. Says he's been sick to his stomach all day thinking about it. He was driving home from a late shift the night Emily disappeared. County Road 7, around 10:15 p.m. Somewhere in there. The time is slippery, but the image isn't. There was someone on the side of the road, he says, standing real still, close to the white line. I thought maybe a hitchhiker, but they didn't stick out their thumb or wave me down. Just stood there. Could you see their face? Mercer asks. No, it was dark, headlights in my eyes from the other direction, just a shape, tall, maybe a man, maybe not. Wearing something dark, no reflective stuff, no flashlight. Spooked me, honestly. I sped up. Did you see a car, a truck, anything pulled over? He shakes his head. No, just the shadow, like they were waiting. For someone. The word hangs there, waiting. If that shadow belonged to the same man at the diner counter, then this isn't random. This is premeditated. A hunt. He watches her all shift, nurses his coffee, learns her schedule, leaves before she does, drives to the dark stretch where he knows she'll be soon. Waits. But if that's true, where's his vehicle? Did he park further up the road, in the trees? Did he walk to her? Or was the shadow someone else entirely? Another unlucky soul on a cold night, frozen in headlights, now dragged into a story that isn't theirs. Manmoy Kila, a strange clue, could crack everything open, could be just another trick of light on a frightened man's memory. The media grabs hold of the shadow detail like a dog with a bone. The next night's broadcast leans into it, the anchor's voice drop-pitched for drama. A mysterious figure seen on the roadside near where the teen's car was found. Was it the abductor or just a haunting coincidence? Haunting. That word finds its way into print, into conversation. People start saying the road is cursed. That if you drive it too late at night, you'll see her in your rearview mirror. Or him, or both. Mercer ignores the ghost stories. He can't afford superstition. He has enough monsters made of flesh and bad choices to deal with. Day 3, and fatigue starts to show in the investigation's seams. Deputies snap at each other. Volunteers miss patches of ground. The coffee tastes like burnt mud. Everyone is running on adrenaline and stubbornness. Still, the machine grinds on. They chase every weird guy report from the last month. A man who sat too long in the grocery parking lot. A stranger at the gas station who asked the clerk when the store closed, twice. A salesman who knocked on doors after dark. One by one, they are interviewed, cleared, moved into the pile of probably nothing. Mercer goes back to the diner, stands in the exact spot where Emily would have stood when she rang up that last check. He watches the door, tries to imagine the man in the dark jacket, the cap, the too long stare. Anyone remember what he sounded like? He asks the staff again. Accent, way of talking? Local, one waitress insists. Not from around here, another says. He sounded off. Memory is a funhouse mirror now. Everyone's sure. No one agrees. At the end of the third day, the sheriff calls a brief meeting in the cramped command post. The whiteboard behind him is crowded with facts and guesses pretending to be facts. We're not calling this a cold case, he says, voice hard. Not yet. We are still in active search mode. I want every inch of that 3-mile radius covered again tomorrow. We widen on the weekend. We bring in more dogs. We press the media. Keep her face out there. He doesn't say the other part out loud, but it's there in the air. The longer she's gone, the worse the odds. After 72 hours, every statistic chart tilts against them. Later alone, Mercer sits at his desk and studies the photos spread in front of him. The car, the ditch, the bracelet, the shoe, the map, the photocopied picture of the composite sketch they've started working up from witness descriptions of the man at the diner. Mid-30s, dark hair, cap. He draws a thin red line from the diner to the mark on the road where the car sat. Then a dotted line from there to the ditch where the shoe lay. A crooked path, not quite straight, not quite random. He thinks about the soda spilled on the floor mat, how it looked darker under the flash than just cola. A tech mentioned a chemical smell, faint, hard to place. The sample is in a lab now, being tested, but results take time they don't have. If someone slipped something into her drink, she could have started feeling it on the drive home. Drowsy, lightheaded, slower reflexes, more likely to pull over if she saw someone waving, less able to fight if someone reached in. If that's true, then the danger didn't start on the road. It started back under the fluorescent lights of the diner, right there at the counter, with a coffee cup and a movie star smile and a question, "What time do you get off?" Outside, the town moves in a new rhythm. Kids aren't allowed to walk home alone anymore. Store owners install cheap little cameras above their doors. Women who used to run on those back roads after dark now circle the well-lit track at the school instead. It's already happening. The shift, the story, a line is being drawn in local memory before Emily, after Emily. She's not a headline yet, not officially a cold case, but in the deep, quiet center of things, something has already frozen. Late that night, Mercer drives County Road 7 alone. He pulls over where her car was, turns off his headlights, sits in the dark, engine ticking. He stares into the black strip of trees, into the indifferent fields. Imagines the hum of her engine, the dome light glowing, the radio low. Imagines footsteps on gravel, a shadow leaning in, a voice saying her name. He feels the weight of the silence that followed. The gap between that moment and the trooper's call to dispatch. A slice of time no one saw but her and whoever else was there. Cold case, the future will call it. Solved, the future headlines will add, with a neatness that will make his teeth grind years later. Right now, though, there's nothing neat about it. Just an empty seat, an open door, a bracelet in the dirt, a shoe in the ditch, a town on edge, and a question hanging over everything like low Ohio cloud. Where's Emily Hart? The road doesn't answer. The fields don't answer. The diner doesn't answer. All of them just sit there, holding on to their piece of the story, waiting to see how much time, how much fear, how many lives will be poured into this disappearance before someone dares to whisper the word no one wants yet. Cold. And slap it on a file that feels, even now, too hot to hold. By day 4, the town starts speaking a new language. It's made of timelines and tip lines, alibis and last sightings. I heard, and they say. Every conversation circles back to the same black hole at the center of it all. County Road 7 at 10:41 p.m., a running engine, an open door, no Emily. At the sheriff's office, the whiteboard is full. So full they drag in a second one. Diner written in thick black marker, underlined twice. Car, shoe, shadow, boyfriend, creepy male pickup. Each word sprouts notes, arrows, question marks in red and blue like a conspiracy theory blooming in real time. Mercer stands in front of it with a styrofoam cup of bad coffee cooling in his hand. Eyes moving from one word to the next. Everything is there. And yet nothing is there. They've gathered puzzle pieces and realize the picture on the box is missing. A deputy comes in with the overnight incident log. We got another call about screams near the river, he says. Same caller as yesterday. Neighbor says she just doesn't like living alone. Mercer nods, barely listening. He's stuck on the man at the counter, the stranger, the one who stared too long and asked what time Emily got off, the one who left cash and no name, the phantom that keeps clawing his way out of every retelling. He pushes for a composite. It's early, memories are fuzzy, descriptions don't exactly match, but he doesn't care. He gets the waitress, the dishwasher, the busboy, the night manager, sits them in a quiet room with the sketch artist. Hair? Dark. Brown. Could have been black, it was dim in there. Age? 30s. 40s maybe. Older than us, younger than my dad. Eyes? Didn't look right at them. Small. Cold. Normal, I guess. Memory is already blurring at the edges, smudged by fear, by the need to be helpful, by the way humans rewrite their own perception the moment they know something terrible happened. Still, by the end of the session, a face emerges on the paper, generic, almost disappointingly so, a man who could be anyone. They photocopy it, staple it to a press release, fax it to the local news stations, print stacks of flyers and hand them out at gas stations, truck stops, supermarkets. Person of interest, the headline reads. Seen at diner before girl vanished. The evening news loves it. The anchor holds up the sketch, the image filling the screen behind her. Do you recognize this man? She asks, voice dipped in urgency. Police say he may have information about the disappearance of 17-year-old Emily Hart. Phones light up. They always do when a face hits TV. Tips pour in. He's my neighbor. He's my ex. He was a guy I saw at a rest stop last summer. Mercer and his team chase them all. Hop from living room to living room, office to garage, comparing real faces to the drawing. Close, not quite. Similar jawline. Wrong eyes, same scar, wrong height. The sketch starts to feel like a mirage. Every time they think they're closing in, it shifts. Meanwhile, the town moves into phase 2 of communal shock, ritual. They organize a prayer vigil on the high school football field. The bleachers fill with people in heavy coats, breath puffing white into the cold night air. The stadium lights stay off. Only candles burn, a flickering constellation of worry. The pastor from First Baptist stands at the 50-yard line with a microphone that squeals once, then settles. We gather tonight for Emily, he says, for her safe return, for strength, for answers. Students cluster in tight groups, shoulders touching. Some cry openly, others stand stone-faced, as if someone knocked their emotions out of them. Jason sits near the front with his parents on either side, their hands resting on his shoulders, anchoring him. He stares straight ahead, knuckles white around a candle that drips wax onto his fingers. He doesn't seem to feel the burn. A reporter circles the edges quietly, camera operator in tow. He captures the candles, the bowed heads, the homemade signs held up by trembling hands. Bring Emily home. We miss you. Hope. The next night, that footage will run under a bold graphic. Small town shaken, Kong Dong Sok Vivu Mat Tik Bien. The music will swell, the voiceover will lean hard on the words cold case in the making. Because even on day 4, everyone understands what kind of story this is trying to become. Back in the command post, someone mentions the feds. We should loop in the FBI, a deputy says. Get a profiler. Isn't this like their thing? Mercer doesn't argue. Calls are made, forms are filled. A liaison from the Behavioral Analysis Unit eventually arrives in a plain suit with a plain tie and eyes that flick, measuring, cataloging. He reads the file, visits the diner, drives County Road 7, sits in on a briefing, hands steepled, face unreadable. His profile, when it comes, is careful, clinical. Offender likely male, mid-20s to mid-40s, maybe transient or employed in an occupation that keeps him out at night, trucker, shift worker, service industry, demonstrates planning, selected a vulnerable victim with a predictable routine, familiar with the area, opportunistic but not impulsive. It's like being told the suspect is a human who breathes air. The net widens instead of tightening. Still, there's a sentence that makes everyone in the room glance up. Offender may escalate. What does that mean? The sheriff asks. It means if he's done this before, he may do it again, the FBI man says. And if this is his first time, the success of this crime could embolden him. Predator, serial, words that were floating under the surface now bob into view. Parents grip steering wheels tighter as they drive. Teenagers check the backseat twice before starting their cars. Any man alone at a gas station after dark becomes a suspect in somebody's mind. Day 5, day 6. The search radius expands like a stain. They bring in horses to cover rougher terrain. Dive teams check ponds and old quarry pits. The river gets dragged again. Nothing, no clothing, no body, no trace. At the Hart House, casseroles line the counter. The fridge is crammed with things no one eats. Sympathy has a taste. Too salty, too sweet, never quite right. Emily's little brother, 10 years old with big eyes that have seen too much in 1 week, sits at the kitchen table with a stack of missing posters and a roll of tape. He adds little messages in the margins of some. Please help. She likes cherry pie. She is my sister. Her room stays untouched. Bed made, homework on the desk, a sweatshirt crumpled in the corner. Her mother stands in the doorway sometimes and just looks, afraid to go in, afraid to stay out. Detectives keep coming back, questions looping. Did she ever talk about running away? Did she mention anyone new? Did she seem depressed? No, her mother repeats like a mantra. She was tired, she was stressed, she was normal. Normal, the most fragile word there is, it shatters quietly. By the end of week 1, the story starts to harden. Not in the file, on the street. People pick their favorite suspect and hold on to him like a life raft. The boyfriend did it. It's always the boyfriend. No, that trucker guy. You saw the sketch. That's the same kind of guy that was hanging around the truck stop last summer. I bet she just ran off. Kids do that. She'll call when she runs out of money. Nobody really believes that last one. They say it because it's safer. Runaways come back. Murder victims don't. Mercer knows which version of the story he believes. He's seen enough missing girls. He flips through the evidence photos again and again as if something new will appear if he stares hard enough. The lab finally calls with a preliminary on the soda sample. The tech's voice crackles over the line. We've got trace amounts of what looks like a sedative, low dose, could be cross-contamination, could be nothing, but... He hangs up and writes it in big letters on the whiteboard. Sedative. The room gets quieter. If it's real, if someone slipped something into her drink, then this wasn't just a crime of opportunity. This was layered, thought out. He watches her, gains her trust, or at least her indifference, gets close enough to her cup, times it so the drug hits as she's driving. She feels dizzy, pulls over, maybe thinks she's sick, maybe thinks she's tired, maybe doesn't have time to think at all before someone is at her door. Random monster or familiar face. Both options suck the air out of the room. They go back to the diner again, this time laser focused on who had access to her drinks. Staff. Regulars who lean over the counter, that creepy guy, the manager. Did anyone go behind the counter who shouldn't have? Was anyone hovering? Did she ever leave her drink unattended? Answers blur. People second guess themselves. Yes, no, maybe. The shift was busy. It was late. Who watches a drink like it's evidence? The manager gets defensive, the way guilty people do, the way innocent people do too, when the ground under their routine suddenly feels like thin ice. We're not that kind of place, he snaps. Things like that don't happen here. Mercer wants to shout they already have. Instead, he just nods, tight, and leaves with nothing solid except a heavier sense of how vulnerable that diner really was. Day 10, 2 weeks looming. The press conferences shrink. The cameras don't stay as long. Other stories are coming in, fresh horrors with fresher footage. The sheriff stands at the podium again, tie askew, skin gray under the lights. We continue to pursue all leads, he says. We are not giving up on Emily. But the phrase people remember isn't that. It's one he slips in near the end, almost out of habit, almost defensively. At this time, there is no indication that this is connected to any other cases. It's meant to calm. Instead, it plants a new fear. Other cases. There are other cases like this. At night, the rumor mill spins faster. Someone says they heard about a girl 3 counties over who vanished from a bar parking lot. Someone else passes along a story about a hitchhiker gone missing on the interstate. People start connecting dots that may not exist. Serial killer, highway hunter, cold-blooded ghost in a dark pickup. Emily's face appears on a regional crime show. Grainy school photo, voiceover repeating the facts, phone number for tips on the bottom of the screen. The host's last line sticks. If you know anything that could help solve this baffling disappearance, don't stay silent. Solve. The word feels premature. They're still stuck in find. They haven't earned solve. 3 weeks in, the operations shift. The search parties shrink to a core of diehards. The dogs are called in only on credible tips. Patrol cars don't sit on County Road 7 all night anymore. Resources are finite. Time is not on their side. Inside the station, no one dares say cold case. Not yet. It's taboo. But phrases creep in around the edges. Long-term investigation. Ongoing inquiry. Words that all translate to the same sick truth. They're not close. They're not even sure what close would look like. Winter thickens. Snow comes in real this time, blanketing the fields, smoothing over footprints, burying whatever traces might have remained. The roadside shrine where people left flowers and candles near the spot her car sat is now a lump under white. A wilted bouquet pokes out like a hand reaching. On Christmas Eve, the Hart family keeps the porch light on all night. A signal, a promise, a superstition. Her mother sits in the darkened living room staring at the door. Somewhere, it's still December 3rd for her, she says quietly. Somewhere, time stopped. Her father doesn't answer. He's staring at the phone again, waiting for it to ring, dreading that it will. In a back office at the sheriff's department, Mercer signs off on a notation he hates. Search operations scaled back. Investigation continues. He closes the file, but only for the night. The weight of it stays in his hands, in his chest. Outside, County Road 7 lies under a sheet of ice, quiet, reflective. Cars still pass, slower now, tires hissing. Drivers glance just for a second at the place where they know the car was, where the door was open, where the engine hummed into the dark. And even though it's only been a handful of days, a couple of weeks, a few long brutal nights, the road already feels different. It already feels like part of a story that's beginning to cool degree by degree, sliding toward a word no one wants to hear, but everyone feels coming. Cold. Spring doesn't arrive so much as creep in, slow and muddy and disrespectful. Snowbanks shrink into dirty piles, the ice on the ditches cracks, the fields turn from white to brown to something like green. Birds come back, kids ride bikes, the town pretends to exhale. But under all that, something stays frozen, a date, a stretch of road, a name, Emily. On paper, the case is still active. It sits in the open drawer, not buried in the metal graveyard of old files yet. There are still calls, still forms, still ongoing inquiry stamped at the bottom of reports. The sheriff still tells anyone who sticks a microphone in his face, "We haven't given up." Off paper, there's a shift. The search parties don't meet at dawn anymore. The dogs only come out when a tip sounds strong enough to justify the fuel. Volunteers go back to their jobs, their classes, their lives, with guilt coiled in their stomachs because the fields out there are still wide, still full of places where a body could lie and never be seen. Mercer feels it, the slow cooling, the temperature dropping around the investigation. He pushes harder because of it. He starts with the evidence, the things that don't lie, at least not the way people do. Emily's car has been under a tarp in the impound lot all winter, growing a thin, sad skin of dust. They've already processed it twice, but this time he goes over it himself. He moves the tarp, opens the door, breathes in the stale air of a life stopped mid-breath. The driver's seat still smells faintly like cheap diner coffee and whatever floral spray she used in the mornings. The floor mat is stained where the soda spilled. The steering wheel has been swabbed so many times it feels almost squeaky clean under his gloves, but he knows the microscopic ghosts that still cling to it, sealed in tubes somewhere. He sits in the driver's seat, pulls it forward as far as it will go the way she liked it, looks at the mirrors, the blind spots, bare trees stare back. He reaches over, mimics turning the radio down, shifting into park, pulling the key. How do you get someone out of this car without leaving a mark? Either she went willingly or she was blitzed so fast she didn't have time to scratch, kick, grab. The lab report on the soda sample finally comes back in full. The sedative is confirmed. Not cross-contamination. Not a fluke. A specific compound, mild but effective, the kind used in low doses for anxiety or sleep. Enough to make you lightheaded, slower, vulnerable. The notation is clinical. The implication is not. Someone drugged her. It didn't happen on the road. It happened before she left. Which pulls the danger out of the shadowed trees and plants it smack in the middle of that bright, greasy diner where everyone laughs and pours refills and complains about tips. The circle tightens. He goes back. Again, the staff are jumpy now, tired of questions, tired of looking at that sketch. They answer anyway because he keeps showing up with the same calm persistence. Walk me through the end of her shift, he says to the night manager, a stocky man in his 40s with a permanent shine of stress sweat on his forehead. She cashed out, wiped down her section, grabbed her stuff, said she was dead on her feet. Did she drink anything? She always had a soda cup, sometimes coffee. I don't watch what they put in it. I've got a restaurant to run. Who was near it? The manager rubs his face. We all were. It's a small counter. That guy was the creepy one. Couple of regulars. Staff passing by. Could he have reached it? He was sitting right there. Of course he could have. He drags the waitress back in, the one who mentioned the $5 tip and the movie star smile. Think, he says, and his voice is gentle, but there's steel under it now. Did he ever lean over the counter, touch her cup, ask for a refill and point at the wrong one? She digs through her memory like it's a junk drawer stuffed with guilt. He leaned in a lot, she says slowly, like elbows on the counter talking low. I remember thinking she was going to get coffee breath in her face all night, but I don't know if he touched her drink. I wasn't watching for that. The truth is nobody was, because who does that? Who walks into a place you've gone to after church and after games and on slow Tuesday nights sits at the counter under the fluorescent lights and slides poison into a teenage girl's soda like it's nothing? Predators do, hunters do, monsters who look like customers do. Mercer sends the composite and the sedative details to neighboring jurisdictions, to the state lab, to anyone who might have a similar case pinned to their board. A girl drugged at a bar, a woman snatched from a truck stop, anything that smells the same. Fragments come back. A waitress harassed off the interstate 3 years ago. A college student in another county who woke up in her car with no memory of how she got there, miles from the bar where she'd been drinking. An attempted abduction outside a bowling alley. No names, no clear links, just echoes. The FBI liaison makes noises about patterns. If this is a serial offender, he says, he may have left other victims on his route. Victims, plural. The word drills into the town's skull. But without bodies, without matched DNA, without a plate number or a clear face, it's all theory. Big, scary, unsatisfying theory. In April, 3 months after Emily vanished, a kid fishing off a narrow bridge 2 towns over snags something heavy. The line strains, the reel winds, and when he drags it up, heart pounding with visions of a record-breaking catch, it's not a fish. It's a purse. Waterlogged, mud-caked, strap-twisted, the contents are a ruin, clotted receipts, coins turned the same color as the river, the smeared ghost of what might have been a photo once. The brand matches the one Emily was known to carry. The color sort of matches, too, if you squint past the muck. They bring it in. Her mother stares at it through the plastic bag, hands shaking. She had one like this, she says. The words are becoming a chorus. The shoe, the bracelet, the purse. Everything is always like hers, close but not clean enough to be proof. Inside, under layers of silt and fungus and time, they find something that survives, a little plastic coin purse. Inside that, a folded slip of paper. The ink is blurred but still legible in patches. A phone number, a name scrawled above it. Chuck, short for Charles, or Charlie, or nothing. Could be coincidence, could be a direction. They run the number. It's a deadline, disconnected for years. They trace it back through dusty records to a payphone that used to sit outside a now demolished truck stop off the interstate. Payphone, truck stop, Chuck. The circle shifts. The focus moves from the diner's neon and County Road 7's darkness to the humming artery of highway just a few miles away, where semis roar past at all hours, driven by men whose names never cross the town's lips, whose faces blur in rearview mirrors. Trucker, the word drops like an anchor. They hit the trucking companies next, the ones that serviced that corridor in the mid-90s. They ask for logs, manifests, driver lists. They get shrugs, missing records. We only keep those 7 years, and sometimes nothing at all. Still, a few names surface, men who ran regular routes through this area, men named Charles. One of them stands out because his file isn't clean. A couple of complaints from waitresses at other diners, inappropriate comments won't take a hint. A bar report about him getting handsy with a bartender. Nothing ever stuck. Nothing ever went to court. He just got a warning, a slap on the wrist, a note in a file no one read until a teenage girl vanished and someone started looking at the paper trail like it mattered. They bring him in. He's in his late 30s, lean from the road, eyes hooded, hands calloused. He sits across from Mercer in the interview room, arms folded like a shield. I drive for a living, he says. I go to a lot of diners. You gonna arrest me for liking coffee now? Did you eat at Hartley's Diner in early December? Mercer asks, ignoring the bravado. Probably. I hit a lot of spots. I don't keep a diary of my meals. Do you remember a girl? 17, brown hair, name tag, said Emily. He shrugs. I remember a lot of girls. They all look the same in those aprons. The tape recorder whirs softly. Where were you the night of December 3rd? He rattles off a route. He says he was on the road, 3 states over. It's slick, fast, like he's told this story to himself enough times that it feels like truth now. They check his logs. On paper, he's right. His truck was elsewhere. But logs can be cooked. Miles can be fudged. Drivers swap shifts, alter entries, make the clock say what they want it to say. They swab his cheek for DNA. He rolls his eyes, calls it a waste of time, but he lets them. Weeks later, the lab comes back, not a match. File after file, suspect after suspect, the same pattern repeats. Close, no. And all the while, the town moves on in the only way it knows how, by layering new days on top of the hole where December 3rd sits. Graduation comes without her. An empty chair and a row of seniors in shiny blue gowns, a diploma with her name on it handed to her mother while the crowd stands and claps a little too long, not sure where to put their eyes. At the diner, they hire someone new. The first night she works the late shift, a table of regulars stares at her like she's an animal stepping into a trap. The manager puts an extra camera over the back door, a heavier deadbolt on the side entrance. He walks female staff to their cars, whether they want him to or not. On County Road 7, a small cross appears on the roadside, white paint, her initials in black. Someone leaves plastic flowers that never wilt, just fade slowly in the sun. Drive-by memorial, drive-by warning. Inside the sheriff's office, there's a moment, small, bureaucratic, silent, that marks the line everyone's been dreading. The classification on the internal form changes, from missing person active to missing person cold, unsolved. No ceremony, no announcement, just a new box ticked, a new code entered, cold case. 2 words on a screen. A label that feels like a verdict, even though it's really a confession. We don't know. We tried. We're stuck. For the Hart family, the coldness is different. It's the empty chair at dinner, the coat still in the closet, the way her room smells less like her with every passing month. Her mother starts keeping the TV on constantly, the noise a shield against the quiet that presses in. She watches every crime show, every missing person profile, searching for patterns, for something they missed, for a story that ends with a surprise knock on the door and a girl coming home years later, thin and shaken but alive. Her father becomes a ghost in his own house, floating from room to room, picking up objects and putting them down without seeing them. He advocates, calls the sheriff, calls state police, calls legislators, leaves messages. Don't forget her, he says over and over. Don't you dare forget her. At school, new kids come in who never knew Emily. They see her photo on the memorial wall and think she was killed in a car accident or something. The older students correct them in hushed tones. No, she just disappeared. The words hang, just disappeared, like that's something people can just do. Mercer doesn't forget, can't. The file stays on his desk longer than most. He pulls it out at odd hours, reads his own notes like they were left by someone else. He lingers on the word he circled months ago, sedative, on the sketch of the man at the counter, on the notation about the shadow by the roadside, on the phone number in the ruined purse, Chuck, dead payphone, demolished truck stop. The shape of something is there, just enough to suggest a pattern, not enough to draw it. He pushes for the physical evidence to be preserved, careful, airtight, climate-controlled. Someday, he says to the lab supervisor, this stuff might give us what we need. Technology doesn't work miracles, the supervisor replies. Maybe not, Mercer says, but time does weird things. Time, in this case, does the cruelest thing first. It stretches. Days become months. The flyers on bulletin boards curl and fade. The news segments shrink from top-of-the-hour breaking footage to this day in unsolved crimes filler. And through all of it, the phrase settles in, heavy and flat, repeated enough that people start to say it without flinching. Ohio, 1995, cold case. Some add a hopeful twist, cold case, not closed case. Others add something darker under their breath, cold case, and maybe it's better we don't know. Because knowledge is a blade. It cuts, it cleans, it leaves scars. Ignorance is a different kind of wound. It never stops bleeding. Out on County Road 7, spring turns to summer, summer to fall. Corn grows tall, then is cut low again. The cross on the roadside leans, gets hammered straight, leans again. The asphalt cracks and gets patched. Teenagers speed down it with music too loud, then slow automatically as they pass the spot where everyone knows, whether they were here for it or not, that a girl was last seen only in absence. The file cools, the town adaptively forgets and fiercely remembers at the same time. Life goes on. But somewhere, in a box in an evidence locker, under fluorescent lights that never turn all the way off, a bracelet, a scrap of fabric, a smear of soda, a few stray hairs sit in plastic, waiting. Not feeling time, not feeling seasons, not knowing that one day, many years from now, people in lab coats and people with microphones and people who drive past that cross will all spit out the same phrase with a kind of grim satisfaction. Ohio, 1995, cold case solved. Solved. A word that doesn't exist yet. A word that will come wrapped in applause and headlines. A word that cannot change what happened on that winter night. But for now, in 1995, 1996, 1997, it's still just out of reach. Right now, all there is a girl who drove into the dark and never came out, a town that tightened its grip on its children, and a case file that cools degree by degree, even as the questions around it stay hot enough to burn anyone who touches them for too long. Time moves on the way it always does, slow when you're watching it, brutal when you look back. 1997, 1998, 1999. New Years roll through the town like freight trains. They bring graduations, weddings, new stores on Main, new cracks in the sidewalks. They do not bring Emily home. Her case file gains dust in thin editions. A possible sighting at a mall 2 states over. A vague prison house rumor about a trucker boasting he made a girl disappear in Ohio once. A tip about bones in the woods that turn out to be deer. Every lead pops like a firework, brief and bright, then dies out, leaving the sky darker than before. At Hartley's Diner, the aprons get new names pinned to them, the counter gets resurfaced, the coffee pots get replaced, but there's a stain on the place you can't clean with bleach. New hires hear the story by week 2. Old staff tell it like a cautionary tale. Don't walk out alone, don't leave your drink unattended, don't ignore the little itch between your shoulder blades when a customer stares too long. County Road 7 keeps being a road, asphalt, shoulder, ditch, fields. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was just that. People who weren't there, who arrived after, drive it without bracing. The ones who remember always feel something knot in their gut as their tires hit that stretch. By 2002, kids who were 10 when Emily vanished are seniors now. They drive their own cars. They've grown up inside the story, breathing it like oxygen. Their parents say, "Text me when you leave," and it's not overprotective, it's survival. Inside the sheriff's office, faces have changed. Some deputies retired, some transferred, some burned out. The whiteboard that once screamed Emily Hart is gone, erased, replaced by newer scenes of chaos. The file that holds her story is in a different place now, a cold case shelf in a back room, metal full of boxes with labels that all sound the same if you say them fast enough. Missing, unsolved, unknown. That's where Detective Mark Hollis finds it. Hollis is new here, but not new to the job. Early 40s. Quiet, methodical. The kind of cop who doesn't raise his voice, doesn't slam doors, doesn't brag. He just keeps showing up, eyes tired, notebook open. He came from a bigger city, traded higher crime stats for lower rent and a slower pace. But crime doesn't vanish outside city limits. It just spreads out, hides better. The cold case shelf is part of his new duties. You can poke at these when you're not buried, the captain says with a half shrug. Mostly they're dead ends, but the families like to hear we're still looking. Still looking. Sometimes that means we open the drawer once a year and move the papers around so we don't feel guilty. Hollis doesn't do guilt avoidance. He does patterns. He pulls a box at random one Tuesday. Old robbery, no heat. The next, a decades-old missing farmer. Then he grabs a slimmer one, almost an afterthought. Label, Hart Emily, 12, 395, missing person, unsolved. He opens it. The first thing he sees is her photo, senior portrait, the one they've used on every flyer, every newscast. Smiling, chin tilted slightly, hair smoothed just enough. A person, not a symbol, frozen in glossy paper. Under it, reports, Mercer summaries, witness statements, maps with circles and arrows, lab results old enough that the font looks dated. And then the crime scene photos. The car on the side of County Road 7, headlights glaring into the camera, door wide open like a gasp, the bracelet in the frost, the shoe in the ditch, the cross on the road that came later. He reads it all, front to back, then he reads it again. By the third pass, a few things float to the surface, refuse to sink. The sedative in the soda, underlined, question marks next to it, no follow-up notes tying it to anyone. The mysterious creepy male at the diner. Dark jacket, ball cap, older, staring. Sketch attached, generic face, possible trucker. The purse fished from the river, the phone number traced back to a payphone at a demolished truck stop, the name Chuck scribbled over it. The shadow by the roadside, 10:15 p.m., standing too still, too close to the white line. And threaded through everything, the phrase over and over again in Mercer's handwriting, in the FBI profile, in the sheriff's notes. Possible truck driver, possible transient, possible serial offender, possible. But nowhere does it say what Hollis wants to see. DNA profile established, compared, matched. In 1995, the tech was there, but slower, clunkier, expensive. Labs were backed up, mixed samples, partials, borderline traces were often filed away as inconclusive, their real worth still decades off. It isn't 1995 anymore. Hollis makes a list. Every physical item logged in this case, the fabric from the car floor, the bracelet, the shoe, the scrap from the purse, the hairs, the swabs from the steering wheel and door handle. He carries the list to the lab director, a woman who's been at this as long as he has. She scans it, raises an eyebrow. "These are old," she says. "So am I," he replies, "but you still return my calls." She snorts despite herself. "What are you asking?" "Rework them," he says. "Everything we can. Run the old samples with the new toys. Touch DNA, updated mixture analysis, the whole menu." She leans back. "You know how many detectives show up with boxes of ghosts asking for miracles?" "Yeah," he says, but this one feels like it might talk if we just ask the right way." There's a pause. She looks at the photo clip to the top of the file. "A kid, just a kid." "I'll see what we can do," she says. It takes time. Months. Cases with fresh bodies and active suspects get priority. That's the ugly math of it. While he waits, Hollis does what he does best. He walks the story. He drives to Hartley's Diner. It has a new sign now, the paint brighter, the logo updated. Inside there are different faces behind the counter. The menu is bigger, but the bones are the same. Same long counter, same corner booth where the regulars sit, same back door that leads out into the parking lot. He sits where that creepy male supposedly sat. He imagines the December air on the other side of the glass, the smell of grease and coffee and tired feet. He watches the staff move, who handles whose drinks, how easy it would be in a rush for the wrong hand to brush the wrong cup. He steps outside, stands in the parking lot where Emily would have walked, keys in hand, head full of nothing more sinister than homework and maybe a song on the radio. From there, he drives the route to County Road 7, from the diner to the intersection, down the stretch where houses thin out and fields grow wide. It's daytime now, but he can feel the shape of the dark that would fall over it in winter. He pulls over where the trooper did, kills the engine, sits. The silence here is different from the diner's hum. It's bigger, deeper. It swallows sound instead of layering it. He opens the old report, reads the times again. Emily leaves the diner around 10 o'clock. The 911 call about the abandoned car hits dispatch at 10:41. 41 minutes. The drive from diner to the spot on the road is maybe 10, 15 if you hit a light. So what happened in the gap? Did she sit in the lot for a while talking to someone? Did she stop somewhere else? Did she pull over earlier, something feeling off, then get coaxed back on the road? Or did it all unfold right here in a storm of seconds? The answers are all still buried in that missing stretch. Back at his desk, Hollis pulls the old interview tapes, the actual cassettes, dusty, labeled with dates and names. He finds the bar witness, the one who talked about a man asking too many questions about young waitresses, about late shifts, about back roads. He listens to her voice, younger back then. He asked what time we closed, then he asked about the girls, the ones who work late, how they get home. I thought he was just lonely or drunk, or both. Did he seem local? Mercer's voice asks from the past. No, she says. He had that road wear on him, like his home was the truck. Did he give a name? He said people call him Chuck. Chuck, the same name scribbled above the payphone number in Emily's ruined purse. The hair rises on the back of Hollis's neck. He rewinds, plays it again, checks the transcript. It was there all along. Mercer circled it. FBI flagged it. Chuck, trucker, payphone. They had a shadow, but no solid shape. Now, 20-plus years later, trucks still roar down the interstate, and Chuck is probably in the ground, or retired, or driving a different state with a different name. The lab calls on a Wednesday afternoon that smells like rain. We've got something, the director says. Hollis is there in 10 minutes, file under his arm, heart beating a rhythm he hasn't felt in a long time. She walks him through it. The soda-soaked fabric stored all these years yields more than it once did. They've rerun it with stronger amplification. We've confirmed the victim's profile, she says, obviously, and we've got a male profile as well, clearer than the 90s runs could pull. Not complete enough for everything, but solid enough for CODIS. She slides a printout across the table. Lines and numbers, peaks and valleys. To most people, noise. To Hollis, a voice. Unknown male, it says at the top. And this, she continues, comes from contact with the door handle. Again, mixed. But we've separated out a consistent male contributor that doesn't match family, boyfriend, or anyone else they swabbed back then. Unknown male, twice, soda, door, inside the circle of the event. What about the shoe, the purse, he asks. Degraded, she says. We got partials, but they're too messy to be useful. These, she taps the 2 profiles, are your best bet. He sends the profile to CODIS, the national database that has ballooned since the 90s, filled now with swabs from felons, arrestees, in some states even suspects who were never charged. Then he waits, again. Weeks later, an email lands in his inbox. CODIS hit, possible match to unknown profile. See attached. His pulse hammers as he opens it. The name at the top is a stranger's, a man arrested in another state years ago for an assault charge that got pled down, a man who died in 2001 in a single-vehicle crash on a rainy night. Full name, Charles Raymond Kincaid, age at death 44, last known occupation, long-haul truck driver. Chuck. The system doesn't know about truck stops or diners or creepy smiles or a girl in Ohio. It only knows numbers, base pairs, alleles, and those numbers say, unknown male from the soda matches Kincaid at a level that makes coincidence practically impossible. DNA doesn't care about alibis or logbooks or what people remember. Hollis sits back, the file open, the name echoing. In the box in the evidence room, the story has been waiting for this word for years. Hit. To the outside world, to the headlines, this is the moment the story pivots from mystery to solution. Cold case cracked, monster named. But sitting there, staring at the printout, Hollis doesn't feel victory. He feels the floor shift. Because DNA in her soda means Kincaid was close enough to her cup to leave part of himself behind. It means he stepped into her orbit. It means the sketch of the creepy male suddenly has weight. It does not, by itself, tell him what happened on County Road 7 between 10 and 10:41 p.m. It does not tell him who dropped the sedative in. It does not explain the shadow by the roadside. It does not answer why a shoe was in a ditch miles away, why a purse rode a river, why a body has never been found. Still, a suspect has a name now, a face, a history. Ohio 1995, cold case solved, the future will declare, loud and certain. Right now, in this small office with flickering lights and coffee rings on the desk, Hollis knows something different. They haven't solved it. They've cracked it open, and whatever has been sleeping inside that box for nearly a decade is about to wake up and demand to be told, in full, whether anyone is ready for that or not. The name hits the file like a gavel. Charles Raymond Kincaid. On paper, he's exactly what the early theories were grasping at in the dark. Male, mid-40s back then, long-haul truck driver. History of complaints from women who met him in places with neon signs and coffee stains, jibes that went too far, hands that didn't understand the word no. Nothing that ever stuck, nothing that ever earned him more than a warning and a note in a margin. On paper, he's the shape they've been drawing around the word Chuck for years. In reality, he's been dead since 2001. Single vehicle accident, rain-slick highway in another state. His truck crossed the median, hit a barrier, burned. No one cared why. They wrote it up as fatigue, speed, bad luck, another statistic. Now, more than a decade after Emily vanished, his blood, collected for some long-ago case, entered into the system as part of a plea deal, finally answers an old question no one thought to ask it. Who touched her drink? Who breathed over that cup long enough to leave his DNA in the sticky ring on the floor mat of her car? Hollis drives home that night, with the name echoing in his head. Kincaid, Kincaid, Kincaid. It fits too well. It's almost suspicious how well it fits. His wife meets him at the door. Rough day? She asks. Big day, he says. Then he tells her, for the first time in his long career, about a case in detail, about a girl in 1995, a car on a dark road, a drink laced with something that made the world blur, a trucker named Chuck who sat at the counter and asked the wrong kind of questions. DNA doesn't lie, she says softly. Kung, he answers. DNA doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole story either. The next morning, he walks into the captain's office and puts the CODIS hit on the desk. The captain reads it once, twice, leans back. Well, hell, he mutters, you did it. No, Hollis says quietly. The lab did, time did. I just asked again. Word spreads fast through the building, fast through the sheriff's department, faster through the small network of people still quietly obsessed with what happened on County Road 7. Someone uses the phrase before lunch, Ohio 95, they finally solved it. Solved. Just like that. One lab report and a dead man's name, and the word everyone's been scared to hope for crawls out of their throats. The DA is on board within days. This is gold. This is the kind of story you put in campaign mailers. Cold case cracked by modern science. Justice for Emily Hart. Even if the suspect is in the grave, the narrative gleams. What else do we have on him? The DA asks in a meeting that smells like coffee and old paper. Hollis lays it out. The bar witness back in 95, who remembered a man asking about young waitresses, late shifts, back roads, said people called him Chuck. The purse from the river with the faded phone number traced to a truck stop payphone, Chuck scribbled above it in smeared ink. The trucking company records that put Kincaid's route through that corridor regularly in the mid-90s. The HR file notes, complaints from women at diners along the interstate. Made me uncomfortable. Followed me to my car once. Wouldn't take no for an answer. And now the anchor, his DNA, in the soda that spilled in Emily's car. The same DNA on the inside of the driver's door handle. He was close. He was there, inside the bubble of her last known movements. Circumstantial plus scientific, the DA says, tapping the file. If he were alive, I'd take this to a grand jury. If he were alive, I'd want more, Hollis says. We still don't have a body. We still don't know exactly where she went, how he moved her, whether he acted alone. The DA gives him that look experienced prosecutors give experienced detectives when the game is half legal, half political. We never know everything, he says. But this is more than we've ever had. Her family deserves a name. Her family, they're the next step. The meeting at the Hart House isn't filmed, isn't public. It's just Hollis, the sheriff, the parents, and the ghost of a girl whose high school photo has faded slightly under the glass. Her mother sits on the same couch she sat on in 1995, but she's smaller now, somehow. Grief has hollowed her out, then solidified her. Her father is grayer, his anger tempered into something quieter but harder. Her brother, no longer the 10-year-old with a stack of flyers, leans in the doorway, arms folded, jaw tight. Hollis explains. Slowly, no jargon, he tells them about the new analysis, the DNA in the spilled soda, the match to a man named Kincaid, his routes, his history, his death years ago, far from here. He waits for their faces to crack into some version of relief, for the word closure to make an entrance. It doesn't. Her mother's first question isn't who, it's where. Where is she asks, and her voice wobbles on the last word. If he took her, if he killed her, where did he put my daughter? We don't know, Hollis says, and the words feel like betrayal. We may never know. We're still searching his history, his roots, cross-referencing other unsolved cases. But right now, we have his DNA in her car and enough context to say he was involved in her disappearance. Involved, her father repeats. That means what? It means, the sheriff says, stepping in, that we can say with confidence he abducted her. Silence. Thick. No one uses the word murder yet. You don't have to. It's sitting in the room like a third parent. After a long minute, her brother speaks. So he gets to die in a wreck, quick, alone, and that's it, he says. He doesn't get dragged into court. He doesn't have to look at us. He doesn't have to say what he did. He just gets written down as the bad guy, and we're supposed to feel better? No one is asking you to feel better, Hollis says quietly. We're asking you what you want us to do with this. Her mother wipes her eyes. What are the options? We can keep the case technically open, keep digging, keep hoping for a bigger answer that may never come, the sheriff says. Or we can declare it cleared, solved, with Kincaid as the primary offender. It doesn't close out our ability to look at new leads, but it does mean we go public, we put his name out there, we give the town a face to attach their fear to. Give the town a face, her father murmurs. What about us? Hollis holds his gaze. You deserve to know what we know. You deserve to decide if knowing his name is enough to bear the word solved. They don't decide that day, or the next. But the machine is already grinding, gears turning. Somewhere, a producer at a regional news station hears a rumor. Remember the girl who went missing in '95? They finally got a DNA hit. A pitch is made, a graphic is mocked up. Online, different now than it was back then, faster, louder. A handful of people who have kept the case alive on message boards and grassroots sites start humming. Kincaid, someone posts. Hearing that's the guy. A blog picks it up. Sources suggest long-haul truck driver linked to Ohio cold case. The story that was once whispers over coffee is about to get its second life, this time in high definition. Weeks later, the sheriff stands in front of a podium again. It's been years since he had to talk about Emily on camera. He's older, thicker around the middle. The lines at the corners of his eyes and mouth have deepened. But when the lights come up and the microphones bloom in front of him like metal flowers, it feels like stepping into the same nightmare with a different cast. Behind him is a blown-up photo of Emily on one side, and for the first time a photo of Charles Kincaid on the other. Mugshot, lifeless eyes, that faint scar near his chin. The press conference hasn't started yet. Reporters murmur, adjust cameras, scribble notes. The words are already forming in their heads. After nearly X years, the Ohio 1995 cold case is solved. Solved. Back in his kitchen that morning, Hollis had stared at his reflection in the dark window over the sink and said it out loud, testing the taste of it. Solved, he whispered, and the word felt heavier than it should. Because here's what he knows, standing at the back of the room as the sheriff clears his throat and the camera's red lights blink on. He knows that Kincaid's DNA in the soda is real, that it puts him in her space at that crucial time. He knows that Kincaid's history fits too well to ignore. The truck stops, the waitress complaints, the questions about girls who work late. He knows the payphone number in the purse, the name Chuck written over it, is not a coincidence you can shrug off. He knows that if a jury ever saw all of this, they would probably convict. He also knows what's missing. There's no confession, no witness who saw them together outside the diner, no plate recorded, no camera footage, no physical trace of her in his truck. There's no map to where he left her, no explanation of the sedative beyond the assumption that he used it. There is no way to ask him now whether he acted alone, whether someone in her world helped set the stage, whether that shadow by the roadside was him or another figure entirely. All of those unknowns hover above the word solved like crows over a field. The sheriff starts talking. Today, after the tireless work of our investigators and the advances of modern forensic science, we are able to bring a measure of closure to a case that has haunted this community for nearly a decade. Measure of closure. The cameras eat it up. The story beams out across living rooms and break rooms and phone screens. They show Emily's photo. They show Kincaid's. They roll B-roll of County Road 7 in winter, shot recently but edited to look like the past. Frost on the shoulder, bare trees, the little white cross leaning a bit in the wind. They say the phrase over and over in different ways. Long unsolved disappearance. Notorious cold case. Finally cracked. Ohio 1995 cold case solved. 5 cold. At the end, the sheriff says, "We believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Charles Raymond Kincaid was responsible for the abduction and likely murder of Emily Hart." Likely, the lawyer word, the word that lets you say solved without having to dig up a body. In the Hart living room, the family watches in silence. Her mother's hands are clasped in her lap. Her father stares straight ahead. Her brother paces, sits, stands, sits again. "How do you feel?" a reporter will ask her mother later, off camera, voice soft, eyes bright with that hunt for emotion. "Do you finally have closure?" Her mother will think about that night in '95, the phone call, the car on the roadside. She will think about the years since, the birthdays missed, the holidays with a chair left empty. "I feel like I have a name," she will say. "I feel like they gave us a villain, but closure?" She'll shake her head. "Closure would be my daughter walking through that door. Everything else is just less unknown." Less unknown, not known. Online, the reaction for once mirrors the town's split mind. Half the comments are triumph. DNA doesn't lie. Finally, justice. Great work by the investigators. The other half are doubt, suspicion, the internet's favorite fuel. Too convenient that he's dead. How do we know someone else didn't put his DNA there? What about that teacher people used to whisper about? What about the sedative? How would a random trucker get to her drink? Threads spin out, theories bloom. Some are wild, disgusting, off the rails. Others hit close to the mark Hollis is quietly tracing in his head. That maybe there were 2 stories colliding that night. A predator from the highway, and someone closer. But the official narrative is set. It will be the one that goes into the record, into the documentaries, into the bullet point summaries, and the YouTube titles and the podcast intros. Ohio 1995 cold case solved by DNA. The killer, a long-haul truck driver, died before he could be brought to justice. In a way, it's true. In another, it's not the whole truth. In the evidence room, the box with her name on it gets a new label slipped into the plastic sleeve on its spine. Cleared. Solved. Suspect deceased. Inside, nothing has changed. The bracelet still lies in its baggie. The fabric still holds the ghost of soda and sedative. The photos are still glossy. The road where her car sat still curves through the fields. Drivers still slow as they pass that spot. Some consciously, some without realizing why. Kincaid's grave sits miles away, a stone with a name that now carries a different weight. And Hollis, sitting alone in his living room long after the press conference and the applause and the well-dones, watches the news replay the story and feels that quiet, unwelcome certainty in his gut. They have a name, they have a narrative, they have a headline. But a cold case like this doesn't thaw all at once. It melts in strange places first. It leaves pockets of ice, pockets of doubt, pockets of truth that weren't invited to the podium. The story has just been stamped solved in big red letters. What nobody knows yet, not the viewers at home, not the hosts rehearsing their dramatic outros, not the kids scrolling past the headline on their phones, is that for some people this is where the mystery ends. For others, including the man who dug the box back out of the dark, this is exactly where it begins to really haunt. The words don't take long to harden. What started as a careful phrase, DNA match strongly indicates, gets boiled down, simplified, sharpened into something you can fit in a headline, shout over a bumper, print on a timeline graphic. Cold case solved. It's on the 6 o'clock local. It's on regional radio. It slides into national true crime segments, a tidy little feel-good story between uglier ones. After almost a decade, the mystery of a missing Ohio teen is finally put to rest, the host says, and the phrase put to rest lands like a stone. In town, the reaction splits clean down the middle, invisible and deep. Some people grab onto the official story like a life raft. Thank God, they say at the grocery store, at church, in the stands at Friday night games. We finally know. They say Kincaid's name with a kind of righteous venom now. They picture his face when they drive County Road 7. They point to the TV segment and tell their kids, "That's the man. He's dead. It's over. You're safe." Others nod along in public and doubt in private. They remember the assistant coach who left town suddenly. They remember the math teacher who got weird, the neighbor who always walked his dog near the diner closing time, the local men who were questioned and cleared. They remember that Kincaid was never seen on that road, never seen talking to Emily outside the diner, never seen in any way except through the haze of old statements and a blurry sketch. But DNA, someone says, and that ends most arguments. Because DNA is magic now. It's the spell that turns maybe into must be. It's science, capital S. And no one wants to be the one standing up in the middle of all this relief and asking, are we sure? Except a few. Except people like Hollis who can't unknow what's missing. And except the ones watching from farther away, through screens, through headphones, through the hungry lens of story. The internet has grown since 1995, mutated from bulletin boards and slow forums into something bigger, wilder, faster. Somewhere out there on a true crime subreddit with a name like Our Unsolved Midwest, the news about Kincaid hits and detonates a thread that's been dormant for years. Ohio 1995, they say they got him. Links get posted, the press conference, the article with the side-by-side photos, the archive footage of the original search. Users with names like Cold Case Crawler and Rust Belt Witness start chewing on it. They pull up old posts, old theories. They cross-check ages, maps, truck routes, known victims of other highway predators. One of them drops a new link. Anyone listen to this yet? It's a podcast. Amateur indie. A woman's voice in the trailer. Clear, steady, a little haunted. This season, we go back to a small town in Ohio, a winter night, and a girl who drove home from work and never made it. A case they now say is solved, but is it? Her name is Lena Cruz, former local news reporter burned out on 2-minute packages and happy face outros. She's turned her living room into a studio, her obsession into a job, her interest in cases like Emily's into a weekly download spike. She started researching the Hart case months before the CODIS hit, drawn in by the starkness of that car on the side of the road that crossed by the ditch, that word cold stamped on a file. By the time Kincaid's name drops, she's already recorded 3 episodes, background, timeline, interviews with old classmates, a phone call with a now-retired Mercer who speaks in careful, measured phrases. She's walked County Road 7 with a mic, captured the hiss of trucks on wet asphalt, the echo of her own footsteps near the spot where the car once idled. Then the DNA match lands, and her story shifts under her feet. What was a mystery season becomes something else. She doesn't kill it. She doesn't surrender to the easy ending. She leans into it. Season title stays the same, Ohio 1995. Tagline changes. They say the cold case is solved. We're going to ask what that really means. Episode after episode drops. She plays clips from the original press conferences and the new one. She interviews the Hart family, her questions soft but direct. She plays their pauses, their sighs, the way her mother says, I feel like we have a name, not an answer. She talks to truck stop workers from the 90s, women who remember a man with a scar near his chin who like to talk about local girls a little too much. She tracks down a former waitress from Hartley's who moved 3 states away and still checks the locks 3 times before bed. Did you ever see that man in the sketch again? Lena asks her. Not that I know of, the woman says. But after she disappeared, every man in a cap looked like him. She calls Hollis. At first he declines. He doesn't want to be a voice in someone's story. He's lived with this case too long to trust anyone to carve it into episodes and ad breaks. Then he listens to how she talks about Emily, to the care in her edits, to the way she refuses to turn the girl into just a hook. He agrees, on conditions. No gotcha questions, no ambush, no promise he'll say what her listeners want to hear. They sit in his small, neat kitchen. She sets her recorder on the table between them. People out there are calling this case solved, she says. Do you? He exhales, long. I think, he says, that we identified a man who hurt her. I think we named a predator who crossed into her life. I think his DNA in that cup is as close to a fingerprint on her wrist as we're ever going to get. But, she prompts gently, but I also think, he continues, that a word like solved makes people think all the questions have answers. And they don't, not here, not yet, maybe not ever. She lets the silence sit. You can hear the refrigerator hum, the tick of a clock, the faint rush of a car outside. What questions? How he got to that drink, Hollis says. Whether he acted alone, why the sedative, why the shadow on the roadside, why no one saw his truck near that stretch, if he was there, where he put her, if he kept anything, if he boasted, if someone else out there knows more and hasn't said a word. Do you think someone closer to her was involved? He hesitates. You can hear the hesitation in the episode, a tiny hitch. I think she was watched, he says carefully. For days, maybe weeks, by someone who knew her routine. Knew where she worked, when she left, what route she drove. That could be a truck driver who stopped in enough times. Or it could be someone local who pointed her out. People like Kincaid don't always hunt alone. Sometimes they show up where they're told a vulnerable girl will be. That line hits the message boards like gasoline on a slow fire. Suddenly the narrative isn't just bad trucker, sad girl, heroic DNA. It's what if someone else opened the door? Online sleuths dig up old yearbook photos, old newspaper clippings, old rumor threads. They re-scrutinize the boyfriend, the coach, the teacher, the manager. They pull screenshots of Kincaid's mugshot and overlay it on the 1995 sketch, circling similarities, differences, drawing arrows. Look at the jawline, someone writes. Not a perfect match. Did witnesses remember him right? Of course memory changed, someone else replies. It was chaos. People forget their own phone numbers when they're scared. The podcast climbs the charts. It earns think pieces. Can a case be truly solved if the body is never found? Are we too quick to accept convenient villains when science gives us a name? In town, people listen with varying degrees of discomfort. Some switch it off after the first episode. Too raw, too close, too much. Others binge it in secret, earbuds in, hearts racing as they hear their own grocery store, their own roads, their own high school described in cool, measured tones for an audience that has never driven past their water tower. The sheriff hates it, officially, politely. We respect their right to report, he tells a local paper, jaw tight. But we stand by our conclusion. Off the record, he grumbles about armchair detectives and second-guessing from people who weren't there when we were freezing our asses off in those fields. He's not entirely wrong. The podcast doesn't smell the wet earth, didn't hear the first cries, doesn't know the weight of knocking on a door at midnight with nothing to offer but a question and a broken line of hope. But it does something the file can't do anymore. It unsettles. It refuses to let the stamp on the box be the last word. Episode 8 drops with a title that feels like a dare. Solved for who? Lena goes back over the path from DNA hit to press conference. She talks about how strong the scientific link is and how thin some of the context still feels. She mentions the truck logs that placed Kincaid out of state that night, logs that could be falsified. She mentions a photo one of Emily's former co-workers dug up from the back of a junk drawer. A Polaroid of a staff reunion at the diner a week before the disappearance. In the background, out of focus, a man at the counter with a cap and a dark jacket. The scar on his chin is a black smudge. Is it Kincaid? She asks. Maybe, maybe not. We can't zoom a ghost into HD, but sometimes patterns are made out of nothing else. She plays a voicemail from a listener who says she dated a man who worked with Kincaid in the late 90s. He used to joke about rest stop girlfriends, the woman says. About girls who wouldn't be missed. I thought it was just gross talk. Then one night, he got drunk and said, but you know what the trick is? You find someone who already has enemies. Then he laughed and wouldn't explain. Is it hearsay? Absolutely. Does it prove anything in a court? Not a thing. But in the court of public perception, it slides another thin layer of doubt under the verdict. Meanwhile, the Hart family lives in a strange in-between. Their phone rings again. Journalists, documentary producers, advocacy groups. Some want to talk about Emily's case as a success story. How did it feel to finally get justice? Others, emboldened by Lena's podcast, want to prod the wound. Do you think they got it wrong? Her father starts saying no more often. No to interviews, no to reliving the worst nights of their lives, so someone can edit them into a neat A to B arc. Her mother listens to the podcast in small pieces, pausing often, pressing her hand over her mouth. What do you think? Her son asks one day, standing in the doorway like he always does when the subject comes up, like he's ready to leave if it gets too much. I think, she says slowly, that every time I start to build a picture in my head, it changes. When they said it was a stranger, I saw one kind of horror. When they said the boyfriend, I saw another. When they said truck driver, I saw him. Now they're saying maybe it's truck driver plus question mark, maybe more than one person. It's like my mind is putting masks on the same nightmare over and over. Do you believe it's solved? He presses. She looks at the TV, dark and reflective. Her own face looks back at her, older, worn. I believe a bad man touched her drink, she whispers. I believe he meant her harm. I believe his name is Kincaid. I believe he's dead and that he never said what he did with my little girl. So if solved means I know everything... She shakes her head. No, it's not solved. Not in here. She taps her chest. Not in here. But out there, in the world of headlines and case listings and data, the label stands. On state websites, on crime databases, next to the text status, it reads, cleared, arrest, exceptional, suspect deceased. On podcasts and news specials and YouTube thumbnails, the phrase is welded into the title because it pulls clicks like a magnet. Ohio 1995 cold case solved. People want resolution. They need it. They need to tell themselves that the dark corners of the world can be lit up by lab reports and determined detectives. They don't like stories that stop on a question mark. But that's where this one really lives. Underneath the neat line, under the word solved, there's a shadow that hasn't moved in years. It's the shadow by the roadside the witness saw that night, tall and still. It's the silhouette of a man at a counter, leaning in as a girl laughs tiredly and reaches for her drink. It's the shape of a second figure you can't quite make out. Just over her shoulder, someone who knows her name, knows her route, knows exactly when she'll walk out into the cold. Kincaid is dead. His DNA is on the cup. The stamp is on the file. And yet, as the podcast ends another episode with that low, unsettling music and the roads outside shine with rain, you can feel it. This story isn't at peace. It hasn't laid down. It's pacing. waiting for someone else to look past the word solved and ask the question that never makes the final cut. Solved enough for the record. But for the girl in the photo, for the town that still slows at that bend in the road, for the detective who can't stop circling the same 4 details in his mind, for the listeners lying awake in their dark rooms with the earbuds still warm, solved for who? The world has moved on, but stories like this have gravity. They pull at everything that passes too close. 2 months after the press conference, the words "cold case solved" have settled into the public consciousness like dust on a closed window. The reporters have moved on, the cameras are gone, and yet, inside the quiet offices of the sheriff's department, something keeps humming, the hum of unfinished business. Hollis still works late. Most nights it's just him and the sound of the fluorescent light above his desk flickering faintly. The other detectives joke about his ghost habit, how he can't let go of dead cases even when they're stamped cleared. But he can't stop replaying details. They don't line up cleanly. The sedative in her drink, it's too deliberate, too specific. Kincaid was a truck driver, not a pharmacist. Where did he get it? What dose did he know to use? You don't improvise that. You prepare. And there's the timing. The drive should have been 10 minutes. The car was found at 41 past 10. Where did those 30 minutes go? What happened between the fluorescent light of the diner and the dark shoulder of County Road 7? He opens the file again, pages worn from his hands. In Mercer's original notes, there's a small line most people missed. Witness at gas station on Route 18 reports seeing a light blue sedan parked behind diner around 9:45. No driver seen. Engine off. Not Emily's car. Hers was gray. Another sedan, parked, empty. The note never went anywhere. Probably dismissed. Wrong time, wrong make, wrong model, but Hollis circles it in red ink. He cross-checks the truck logs again, even though it's been done a dozen times. Kincaid's manifest puts him miles away. And yes, logs can lie, but there's something too convenient about that too. He requests a copy of Kincaid's case file from the other state, the crash that killed him. It arrives in a thick envelope, the pages brittle and yellowing. The photos are grim. A twisted cab, fire-blackened metal. But among the wreckage inventory list is something that makes Hollis sit up straighter. Personal effects recovered. Wallet, driver's license, metal cross pendant, keys, small spiral notebook, brown leather glove, single. A notebook! He tracks it down, buried in the evidence archives of a county that never thought they'd need it again. It takes 2 weeks of calls and one stubborn archivist, but eventually a box arrives. Inside, wrapped in a faded plastic bag, is the spiral notebook. Most of the pages are mundane, routes, phone numbers, crude jokes, gas prices. But near the back, the handwriting changes, smaller, tighter, like secrets trying to hide inside the lines. 2 pages stand out. One says H123, diner 9 p.m., talk to girl. And below it, payphone out, call later. Don't forget Mix. Mix, the sedative, the one found in her soda? Hollis feels his pulse in his throat. The next line reads, she smiled, then a smear like the pen dragged through wet ink. It's not a confession, it's not even proof, but it's enough to put something sickly human behind the horror. A man sitting in his truck, scribbling down a plan that turned into a girl's disappearance. He calls Lena. You'll want to see this, he says. They meet at the station after hours. The notebook sits on the desk under a bright lamp, pages open to that entry. She leans in, silent, recorder off for once. This is from the crash, he explains. Kincaid's own handwriting, date matches, diner matches. He called her the girl. Not by name, not like someone familiar. She exhales slowly, so it really was him. Maybe, Hollis says, but there's something else. He flips back 2 pages. Look at this. Earlier entry. M said she works late. Easy mark, County 7. M, just a letter. Who's M, she whispers. That's what I've been asking myself, he says. If Kincaid acted on a tip, someone had to give it. Someone local, someone who knew Emily's schedule, her route, the road she took every night. It changes everything. Lena records again, softly. Detective Hollis shows me the page, she narrates. A single letter and initial written in fading ink that could alter everything we thought we knew. The episode drops a week later. The headline, the letter M. Online, it explodes. Speculation goes wild. Who was M? Manager. Mike, the dishwasher. Matt, the boyfriend's cousin. Maybe Mercer himself. Some listeners spiral deep into paranoia, convinced it's a cover-up, that Kincaid was part of something larger, a network, a ring, a pattern stretched across states. Others think it's nothing, a scribbled initial that could mean anything. But the case starts breathing again. Calls flood the sheriff's office. You should check the diner manager. Ask about that teacher again. Look into a guy named Morrow who used to drive that road. Hollis spends nights wading through noise, but one call sticks. A woman's voice, low, urgent. I worked at Hartley's back then, she says. You don't know me. I left town right after it happened. But I remember something. There was a man who came in, talked to one of our bus boys, called him Mick. That boy bragged later that he was going to get paid for a favor. When the girl went missing, he disappeared. Hollis writes fast. What was his full name? I don't remember, she says. He was young, maybe 19. M something. Michael, that's all I've got. He pulls old payroll records. Most of the names are familiar, but buried halfway down the list. Michael Marrow. The name tugs at memory. He digs deeper, finds an old incident report. Marrow, picked up for trespassing behind the diner 2 months after Emily vanished. Released, moved out of state, never seen again. He runs the name through national databases, nothing recent. Then, hit, arrest in 2003 for petty theft in Illinois. The file lists a last known address long abandoned, but fingerprints still in the system. He cross-checks them against the old evidence from Emily's car. Most were degraded, too faint. But one print from the back door handle was marked unmatched. It hadn't been Kincaid's. He sends it in. The results come back 3 days later. Partial match, Michael Aaron Marrow. Probability of identity, 98%. The world tilts. The boy from the diner, the initial in the notebook. Hollis sits in his office as thunder rolls outside. If the data's right, Kincaid wasn't alone. Someone local opened the door. Someone local pointed him toward her. The cold case they just declared solved is unraveling, thread by thread. He looks at the file label, cleared or solved, suspect deceased. He grabs a pen, crosses out solved, writes a single word above it. Open. And for the first time in years, the ghosts of Ohio 1995 seem to stir. Somewhere out there, maybe still alive, maybe not, a man named Marrow is holding the last missing piece, the truth that even DNA couldn't bury. And in the flicker of lightning outside the window, Hollis knows the story isn't over. It's just starting to show its teeth again.